The ambulance rushed down the deserted road at 2. The driver was pushing hard on the gas pedal. Emily Molwa, the doctor, was hurrying. "Jack, hurry up and drive. We're going to the Blue Moon nightclub. There was a mass brawl there, and Michael's on duty tonight. I call him, and he doesn't pick up. My heart's not in it. God forbid something should happen to him. I wouldn't survive it." The chauffeur grumbled. "Emily Andreevna, don't get yourself worked up before your time. Do you know what goes on in these clubs at night? Young kids use illegal substances, so they get violent. I don't know why your spouse isn't picking up the phone. Maybe he's too busy. He has a lot of work to do. Just have time to separate and restore order." The doctor didn't stop. I told him 100 times to give up this part-time job, but he keeps saying the same thing. They say the extra money will not hurt. We'll save up and take my son to the sea. And I take him to that damn club every time like I'm taking him to war. I wish he was all right. At last they arrived. Emily jumped out of the car with a suitcase and rushed into the thick of things. A crowd of gawkers surrounded the wounded. A woman shouted, "Make way, young people. I need to help the injured." "Oh, Mommy, Michael, honey." She stammered and almost lost her senses when she saw her husband wounded on the pavement and her partner dead beside him. But a professional reflex still prevented her from losing consciousness, and she began to work. Trying to resuscitate her husband, she gave him artificial respiration, looked for a pulse, but all in vain. Michael briefly regained consciousness, saw Emily and wheezed in agony. "Forgive me, Emily. I love you." And he died in her arms. And she shook him like a doll and screamed hoarsely, "No, my love. Wake up. I forbid you to die. I need you. My son needs you." Emily woke up to her young son shaking her by the shoulder, and she was screaming in reality. The little boy was babbling fearfully, "Mommy, wake up. Are you screaming like that? I'm scared. Are you in pain?" Emily didn't come to her senses right away, her hair disheveled and wet with sweat. Her nightgown clung to her body, the bed was rumpled. Her heart was pounding like crazy. The woman exhaled noisily, took her son in her arms, pressed him against her, and began to soothe him. "No, sweetie, it's all right. It was just a bad dream. Don't be afraid, Mommy is fine. Come on, I tuck you in." Ben was stubborn. "No, I don't want to be alone. Can I go to bed with you? Please." The woman quietly replied, "Of course you can. Come here, my good man." Covering her son with a blanket, she watched as her sweet baby boy rolled around a bit and fell asleep. And Emily didn't sleep another wink of sleep until morning. Tears choked her. Again and again, she remembered those terrible minutes that divided her life into before and after. And Emily married for love. She was the envy of all her friends. Michael was handsome, athletic, a master of judo. He worked as a coach, loved his work, and cherished it. They lived well, almost never quarreled. And when Ben was born, the husband and it all began to carry Emily in his arms, helped to nurse. At night, the cradle by turns stood up. But her husband's favorite job did not bring much money, and he so wanted to live in prosperity and at least buy a car for the family. So he got a part-time job as a security guard at a nightclub. Emily was totally against it. She herself has a dangerous job. Sometimes every shift saved the lives of patients. And now she was worried about her husband. Her heart felt like it was in trouble, and for good reason. That night, when her husband was gone, a crowd of hooligans tried to break into the club, but the guards did not let them in. They were drunk. A fight broke out. His partner was killed instantly. And Michael, according to eyewitnesses, fought to the last man. But the enemy with a knife could not cope. The villains immediately fled. They were never found. The cameras have been reviewed many times, but we can't make out any faces. They're all wearing hoods. Somebody recognized one of them as the son of a local MP. The case was quickly hushed up, and the witness recanted his testimony. Said at the trial he was mistaken. Emily's condition was terrible. She could barely hold on, but it was for her son's sake. There was no one to support her and help her through the grief. Michael was raised by an old grandmother. She died long ago, and Emily's mother went abroad and created another family. There was born a joint child. The native daughter turned out to be superfluous. They hardly ever spoke to each other. That's just the way it was. Colleagues, however, were very sorry for her. but no one prying into her soul. A 5-year-old son, Ben, was the only ray of light in the abyss of grief. Emily lived for him. Truly missed his father desperately, too. The woman did not lie to him, explained, as she could, that Daddy now lives high on a cloud. It's been 6 months now, but the wound in her soul still hasn't healed. It was like yesterday. Emily dreamed about Michael almost every night, and in the morning she woke up grief-stricken and exhausted. She drank strong sedatives. She tried to cheer up in front of her son, but she felt so bad, so bitter. She wanted to embrace Michael, to breathe in the pleasant smell of his cologne again, and to feel the calm and peace that had left her forever. After that tragedy, the next morning Emily could barely get her head off the pillow after a sleepless night, and she had a heavy shift ahead of her. She drank a strong cup of coffee, took her son to her neighbor Aunt Susan's house. She looked after the baby out of the kindness of her heart when the woman was on call. Emily was swirling with the day's endless calls. By evening she was very tired. There was one last outing left, an address in a nice bedroom community. She had to go to a child with a high fever. The door was opened by a pleasant man in his 40s. He waved Emily in from the threshold, inviting her in, and took her aside. He started whispering. "Excuse me, I have something to ask you. She's sick, fever, sore throat, she's whining and cranky all the time. She won't eat anything. Can you say you're a fairy? To cheer her up a little so she won't be so scared. Because when I told her the doctor was coming, she got hysterical. She's really scared of doctors for some reason." Emily smiled and agreed. "Okay, I'll give it a try. I have a 5-year-old son myself. Know how little kids don't like to be treated. What do you say? Let's go." Emily quietly entered the nursery. A stubby little girl was lying on the bed. Her cheeks were on fire and her eyes were sleepy. When she saw the doctor, the little girl shrank into the mattress and began to whimper. The doctor smiled at her welcomingly and waved her over. "Hello, Sarah. Don't be afraid, I'm not just a doctor, I'm a real fairy. My assistants whispered to me that a good girl is sick, and she is not well now, so I've come to help. Now I will wave my magic wand and you will feel better." The girl perked up, smiled too, and asked, "Are you really a fairy and won't give me a shot? Well, where's your magic wand? Show me." Emily pulled out the throat spray and waved it around, saying cryptically, 1, 2, 3. Sarah's throat doesn't hurt. "Let me see your tongue. I think it's purple." The girl got into the game and immediately replied, "Not at all. Look, it's not purple." She playfully let me examine her throat. It was red. Emily continued, really ordinary. "Well, there you go. Now let's take each other's temperature. Do you know what a fairy's temperature is?" Sarah answered, "No, I don't. I thought fairies were made of air. They don't have temperatures, don't they?" Emily piped up, "Well, let's check with you first and then with me." Looking at the thermometer, Emily shook her head. 38.2. A fever that high was very dangerous for small children and needed to be brought down immediately. She took out antipyretic powder, diluted it with boiled water, and said 1, 2, 3. Sarah's temperature rose. "Go away, that's it, I've enchanted the water. It's magic now. So you drink it and you'll feel better soon. Let's test it." The girl obediently drank the medicine. She was clearly enjoying this game. Emily took her father into the other room. "Most likely your daughter has the flu or an acute respiratory infection. You need to see a pediatrician. In the meantime, I'll write to you about the antiviral medication and the regimen. Start treatment today. You can't delay." The man hesitated and asked, "Thank you very much. You're really good with kids. I can't do that. But can I ask you one more favor? If you don't mind my asking, I need a few more minutes with Sarah. And there's a pharmacy downstairs. I'll get some supplies and be right back. I don't want to leave my daughter alone. This is probably your last call, isn't it?" "All right, but make it quick. The driver's going to get mad." "Our shift is already over," Emily replied. The man ran to get the medicine and Emily went back to the nursery. She continued to play. It's New Year's Eve soon. There are 3 days left. All obedient and good children get presents. The fairy wants to make you a present to fulfill your most cherished wish. Write it on a piece of paper or draw it. Can you write? Sarah nodded her head and took the leaf in her hands. She thought about something, scribbled something down. Then she folded the leaf and held it out to Emily. "Only it's a big secret. Please don't tell Daddy, okay? Or he'll scold me." Emily replied, "I promise I won't tell. Fairies don't give away secrets. Your wish will definitely come true." So see, you have to believe in miracles. They do happen, especially on New Year's Eve. "Where's your mom?" At work, Sarah shook her head negatively. "No, she's out on some kind of holiday. That's what Dad said, probably a matinee." Emily thought to herself, "Weird. Daughter's sick and mom's out for a walk. I wouldn't be able to have fun knowing the kid isn't feeling well at home. Well, it's none of my business. It's no one's business." The owner came back and began to thank. "That's it. I did it. I bought what you told me to buy. And tomorrow I'll take Sarah to the pediatrician, just in case. Thank you very much. You've been a great help. My name is Alex." The doctor nodded. "I'm Emily." "Well, that's it. I have to go. It's getting late. Sarah, get well. Have a good day. It's time for the fairies to go to the other babies. I'm flying." Emily hurried to the car. Jack rambled on as usual. "What took you so long, Emily? It's about time you turned in your shift and went home. My wife is giving me a hard time." Emily didn't dare open the girl's note in the car, or the driver would laugh or scold her if he saw what she was late for. She was sure it contained the usual childhood dreams like a scooter or rollerblades. Her son had dreamed of such a gift. She picked up her son from the neighbor and they had dinner together. She missed her very much, and only when she put Ben to bed in the evening she remembered about the note and unfolded it with interest. It was misspelled in big letters. "Aunt Fairy, give me back my mommy. I miss her so much." Emily was taken aback. How could that be? After all, Sarah had said that her mom had left for the party, and now she's asking her to bring her back. It doesn't make sense. So the mom she's living with isn't her own. It was a mystery that kept the woman up all night. She didn't expect a 6-year-old child to dream such a thing. Emily thought, "I promised Sarah that I would fulfill her wish. She trusted me and would wait for me. So what? I've deceived her. No, I can't let this go. I have to go back to the Sanderses and talk to her father. Maybe he'll scold me for sticking my nose into someone else's family. But I'll show him my daughter's note. At least I'll try to help Sarah." The New Year's Eve festivities flew by quickly. People were having fun, congratulating each other, finishing their goodies, and watching celebrity concerts. Emily went to the Christmas tree with Ben, went for walks, but still her thoughts went back to that girl Sarah. She couldn't get it out of her head and forget. On weekends, Emily took her time getting up early. She lay in bed with her son for a while, turned on Ben's favorite cartoons, and went to make her son his favorite pancakes with syrup. Then they took a long walk together in the park and rode down the slide on their hands. At lunchtime, when Ben had eaten and fallen asleep after a long walk, she asked a neighbor to watch him. "Aunt Susan, please watch Ben for an hour. I have to go out on business alone. It's not convenient to go there with a baby. I'll be quick." The neighbor agreed, especially since the baby was asleep anyway. Emily set off toward the house where Sarah lived. She herself didn't know what she would say to her father, how to explain her visit this time. The door was opened by a young, unpleasant-looking woman, though well-groomed. She asked nervously, "Who are you and what do you want? We don't really expect guests." Emily was taken aback by such rudeness, but calmly asked, "You see, I'm a doctor on the ambulance. I came to see you recently. I wanted to know if the girl is better now. Is her daddy home? I'd like to talk to him." The landlady got upset. "You're not a pediatrician. So why did you come here? Since when do ER ladies check up on patients? And what do you care about Alex? What you got your eye on him? Get out ta here." Emily was afraid of getting punched. What a mess she'd gotten herself into. But then she heard footsteps on the stairs. Alex was coming down. He recognized the doctor and was very surprised. "Emily, how are you here?" "They are already better. Thank you. Is there something you wanted to know?" Emily fidgeted, nervous and unsure of how to say it. Then she decided, "You see, we were playing a game, but I asked her what she wanted most in the world, just for fun. She wrote her wish on a sheet of paper. Well, she wants her mom back more than anything in the world. I'm a little shocked, to be honest. I happen to have promised to help her get her wish. I know it's a stupid situation and I have no right to interfere with your family. But I can't get over what she said. Children believe in miracles and usually don't lie when they make wishes. But I didn't expect to read this. I don't know why I'm here. You don't have to tell me anything. I'm sorry. I'll be going now. Alex sighed and replied, That's the thing. I think I understand. I took Sarah from the orphanage. I want to adopt her. The papers are already being drawn up. I've got a crush on her. She's a sweet girl, smart. I often help orphanages. I saw Sarah in one of them by chance and couldn't pass her by. I was told by the manager that her mother was a naughty and promiscuous woman who abandoned the girl. Who was she? I didn't find out. I'm not interested, but a child is a child. I guess she remembers her after all. Well, it'll take time for her to get used to us. Forgetting my past life, I'm willing to do anything to make Sarah happy. You see, she is everything. She's not poor. So don't worry, we're fine. We won't keep you. Have a good day. Emily said goodbye, but she noticed how nervous Alex was and obviously did not agree on something, hurried to escort her out. But no sooner had the woman went outside and walked about 200 meters than she was caught up by the same boorish stepmother of the girl and handed her a note. Wait. Here, take this. Here is the address and all the details of Sarah's mother. Alex lied to you. I don't know what he saw in that little girl, but I don't want her for nothing. I'm not ready to raise my own kids yet, and I'm not ready to raise someone else's. You go look for her deadbeat mom. Let her have her. Emily was stunned. The pretty girl ran away, and she stood in the middle of the street, clutching the paper with the address in her hand. She thought to herself, God, poor Sarah is living under the same roof as a stepmother who hates her. Alex, however, feels that he loves the girl and has no idea that his wife is such a calculating and cruel person. What a family. There was no time to ponder. Emily immediately got on another bus and drove to the address she'd been given. She couldn't wait to find Sarah's mother and see for herself whether she was a fallen woman or not, and ask her in her own eyes why she'd abandoned her daughter. The house was small but well kept. There were pretty curtains on the windows, a sandbox and swings outside, probably made for Sarah. A drunken man came to the door. He swayed barely on his feet and tried to ask, Who are you? What do you want? Emily exhaled and asked timidly, Excuse me, I'm looking for Ashley Kudryashova. Does she live here? I have important business with her. The man waved his hand to go through and shouted at the house. Ashley, get out here. You got a visitor. You want a drink? Just then, a pretty woman in her 30s came into the hallway in a wheelchair. She was completely sober and frightened. Good afternoon. I'm Ashley Kudryashova. You must be from social services? Yes, come into my room and we'll talk there. Oh, I can't get a minute's peace out of this freak. He's been drinking and drinking since Ben moved in. The master lay down on the sofa and began to mutter, falling asleep. And you're not my bones, I want a drink. Maybe my life didn't work out because of you. There was finally silence in the house, and the women were able to talk quietly. Emily told all about Sarah, showed the note, and then asked, Tell me, Ashley, why did you abandon your daughter Alexa? They said at the shelter that you're a drunken, fallen woman. He wants to adopt her. He's already filed the paperwork. The girl's living in his house now. Ashley turned pale, shrieked, and cried, What on earth is going on? How can this be? No one has taken away my rights to my child. My daughter was temporarily taken to an orphanage after the accident until I could get back on my feet. I would never willingly put Sarah in an orphanage, not even now. It's all Ben's fault. He got drunk, he got violent. So the neighbors called the police. And then the neighbors called the child welfare authorities. They said I'm an invalid and my stepfather's an alcoholic. And there's no one to take care of the girl. She screamed so much, poor thing, when they took her away. I thought my heart would burst too. You have children. Do you have any idea how a mother feels when her own child is taken from her? Emily asked quietly. Tell me everything. Maybe there's something I can do to help you. Ashley wiped away her tears, sighed, and began to tell the whole story of her personal life. I was once very happy. I married for love. My husband worked as an electrician at a factory. I also worked there as a storekeeper. We were so happy when I got pregnant, we were waiting for our daughter. And then there was grief. Tom died. An industrial accident, he was electrocuted. I was in my last month. The stress and grief caused me to go into premature labor. Sarah was barely saved. When my daughter was 3, I met Ben. He told me he loved me. He took care of me. He was good to Sarah. We started living together. We got on well at first. Ben was a market trader. He had his own place. Then 6 months ago, everything changed. He made a bad investment and went bust. All his savings were gone. Ben got depressed, started drinking, would yell at us. Anyway, we started fighting a lot. And a couple months ago, I got hit by a car in a crosswalk. A red car ran so fast that I didn't even have time to realize anything. I woke up in intensive care after surgery, and now I'm confined to a wheelchair. I was worried about how I was going to handle my daughter. I expected Ben to be supportive and sympathetic, but it's like he's lost his mind. He drinks every day and yells at me. I'm really scared. He realizes I'm defenseless and I can't answer him. My daughter is also afraid of him. She wouldn't leave my side a step. And when they came from the guardianship office, he even seemed happy and scandalized them on purpose. So they took Sarah away. I cry day and night. I was cornered like an animal. I love my daughter so much it's hard on my heart. I know she loves me too and misses me. My poor little girl. If I could just get out of this damn stroller, I would leave Ben right away and take Sarah. I have my grandmother's house in the suburbs, albeit unrenovated. But it's just a dream. Sometimes I get so desperate and sad. I want to kill myself, not to torture myself or my daughter. Why should she have a mother like that to take care of? Emily tried to comfort her somehow. God, how can I help you? You know, I'll try to think of something. Just hang in there. You can't give up. There are good people in the world. I lost my husband 6 months ago, too. I didn't want to live. I still miss him. If it wasn't for my son, I don't know if I would have made it at all. So I really understand. You wait. I'll see what I can do to help you. Emily spent the weekend with her son, but poor Ashley's plight was still on her mind, and she decided to go to the Sanderses again to convince Alex to return the baby to its birth mother. And to avoid crossing paths with Sarah's stepmother, she decided to stalk Sanders outside the house. He got nervous again when he saw her, asking, "Well, what do you want? Why are you coming to our house? Leave our family alone. Don't you have anything better to do?" Emily exhaled and started the unpleasant conversation. "Wait, Alex. Hear me out. I found Sarah's mom. She's not a fallen woman or an alcoholic at all. She was just in trouble. She was hit by a car and now she's in a wheelchair. But don't go. Let me tell you. Don't you have the heart to take your own daughter away from her mother? You are a decent man, I feel." After her last sentence, the man finally stopped, sighed, and sat down on the bench. "All right, tell me about it. But you know I will not change my decision. No matter what the trouble, a normal mother in her right mind will not abandon her child, no matter what she tells you. I love Sarah. I'm attached to her. And so does Larissa. And we're not giving the girl to anyone." Emily began to hotly recount Ashley's entire life story. She didn't forget to mention Larissa and the fact that she didn't want Sarah in her house. The man sat motionless, staring at one point, unable to believe what he was hearing. At the end, Emily added, "You have to understand, this adoption is illegal. I mean, Ashley was never disenfranchised. They took the child away for a while until the woman recovers. I don't understand how you managed to pull this off." Alex snorted. "Wait, the superintendent assured me that the mother was a drunk and socially irresponsible. I can't believe you, though. Did she really lie so brazenly? And not a word about the woman's disability." The headmistress, however, did not hide the fact that in order to speed up the adoption process, it would be necessary to make an advance payment for a good sum. "I thought I was doing a good deed, saving a child from a negligent alcoholic mother. Turns out it's the other way around. And Larissa, she treats me well. No offense. Why didn't she tell me she didn't want her foster daughter in the house? Oh my God, where the hell did you guys come from? Not so long ago, I was so happy to have a daughter, a woman I love. And now what? It's all because of you. Go away. I don't believe you. I'm fine. Emily didn't give up and begged. Please, let's go to Ashley's right now. You'll see for yourself and you'll see for yourself. The only thing I'm guilty of is promising Sarah that I'd fulfill her wish to get her mom back. Do you have any idea how much she misses her? I'm a mother myself, so I can't turn a blind eye. I can imagine how Ashley feels right now knowing that her baby girl is far away and she can't hold her, protect her. Alex reluctantly agreed, and they drove to Johnson's. Michael was still drunk, yelling at Ashley. And even on the street you could hear it, "I'm so sick of you. Why do I have to bother with you? And I thought I was going to live with someone young and healthy. And now I have to carry pots for you. Why do you cry all the time? Do you think I'll pity you? You should have looked out when you crossed the road." Emily knocked on the window. Alex was already shocked. What on earth was going on in this family? The landlord came to the doorstep, saw Emily and smirked. "Ah, it's you again. What do you want? You've brought a man with you. Get the hell out of here. You can take Ashley with you. I don't want to see her. I'm sitting here like I'm tied up." A frightened, crying Ashley appeared in the hallway. "Good afternoon, Emily." "You don't listen to him. He's drunk. He doesn't know what he's saying. Michael, go away. Don't embarrass me and keep quiet. I'm the one who's here to see you. And you're acting like an asshole. Come to my room." The man waved his hand and barked angrily. "Do as you please. Whatever you say. I'm off to a friend's garage. At least I'll have some fun. It's a madhouse. A home hospital." Michael left and staggered down the street, shouting something as he went. Emily and Alex went to Ashley's room. The woman asked anxiously, "Are you the man who took my daughter from the orphanage?" "Yes, I guessed it right away. Please give me back my little girl. I love her very much. If they take her away from me for good, I'll kill myself, I promise." Alex listened intently to Ashley. He was shocked. It turned out that the superintendent had lied to him so much. The woman continued, "And it's all because of that tragedy. It happened 3 months ago. It's something you don't forget. I didn't want to go down the high street, but there were good bargains in the store that day. I was on my way home with my shopping, and a red car came out of the traffic and jumped out at me. I don't remember the license plate number, but I saw a beautiful lady behind the wheel, a blonde with dark glasses. And on the rearview mirror hung a golden keychain in the form of a horseshoe. And then there was a bang in darkness. When I was already unconscious, I heard voices of passers-by running in the distance. Someone was yelling about a red Porsche with a license plate, starting with the letter K. The man even felt sick. He immediately remembered how Laura had recently wrecked her car, a red Porsche. She came all soaked and frightened, and said that she had hit a big dog by accident. She took the car to the repair shop right away. They have the same key fob, and the bride wears glasses to keep the sun out of her eyes. And the license plate starts with the letter K. Could it be her? And how could she drive off like that and leave a dying man behind? He began to question the woman in a trembling voice. Did they find the culprit of the accident? What did the police say? Did they even file a case? Ashley shook her head and replied, "No." And that one got away right away. There were no cameras and no witnesses. The only clue was the voices of the bystanders. Maybe I just imagined it. That's how they closed the case. What difference would it have made? I'm not a person anymore. I'm a cripple. My roommate is abusing me. My daughter is being taken away. I don't want to live. Ashley couldn't take it anymore, covered her face with her hands and cried. She had no strength left to fight. Every day was hell. Michael baited her for her disability, didn't want to take care of her. He drank all the time. He became angry and aggressive. Sarah was far away in a foster home, and her boyfriend wouldn't get smart and get her out of there. He was yelling that he wasn't babysitting. How do you stand up and not break down? Emily couldn't stand it either, tears choking her. She put her arms around Ashley. "Ashley, sweetheart, you need to get out of this house right now. We even heard him yelling at you outside. This is no way to live. Let me put you up at my place for now. I have a 2-room apartment. I'll give you a bedroom. It's always quiet and peaceful. Ben will be so happy. I just don't know what I'm going to do about leaving. I mean, I work 24-hour shifts. No one's going to let me take a vacation right now, either. I'm short-staffed as it is." Alex decided to intervene and offered a solution. "I can do it myself. I'll hire a nanny. She'll look after Ashley and your son at the same time." "Ashley, it's really dangerous for you to stay here. Your roommate is violent, and it's going to get violent. There's no way I'm letting them come here, either. I'll bring her to Emily, I promise. I can see now that you're not a lost mother, just an unhappy woman. But I promise you we're going to work together to fix this. You need to see a good doctor, because the trauma is recent. Maybe there's still a chance you can get back on your feet. What's up? Pack your things. We'll help you and Emily." Ashley was crying. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I don't know how to thank you. After my daughter was taken away and I was crippled, I've been so down on myself. I thought no one would want me in this world. I can't even defend myself. And he's getting meaner and meaner every day. You barely know me, but you're willing to lend a hand. You have no idea what that means to me. I'm going to get my stuff together real quick. Emily, will you help me get dressed? Don't worry, as soon as I'm back on my feet, I'll move into Grandma's house with my daughter." Emily moved Ashley into her house. Ben was surprised at first, a little shy about having a stranger in the apartment, but he quickly became friends with Ashley, especially since she gave him all her time. Alex, as promised, hired a professional nanny, and now Emily didn't have to ask her neighbor to babysit her son. Ashley couldn't even believe that now no one was drinking or yelling around her, that she didn't have to fidget in her sleep. She finally felt safe and looked forward to seeing her daughter. Alex had promised to bring her over. Adam didn't immediately notice that Ashley was gone. It wasn't until 24 hours later, when he woke up from his hangover, that he yelled at the house, "Ashley, where are you? Find me a pill for my head. I'm gonna die. What are you doing in there?" But the only response he got was a ringing silence in the house. And realizing that Ashley and her things were gone, he was glad at first. He didn't have to take care of anyone else. Drink up. But the euphoria wore off just as quickly. His friends got bored. No one was waiting at home anymore. There was no one else to cook for, and for some reason I felt so sick and lonely. Adam was angry with Ashley for some reason. He started calling her, saying mean things. His hurt feelings were hurt. And his friends teased him, saying he'd been abandoned by a cripple. His ex-boyfriend used to bring Ashley to tears over the phone. And then Alex couldn't stand it any longer, went to see him and gave him a man-to-man beating, explaining that he should stay out of Ashley and Sarah's lives or he'd go to jail. Adam started drinking even more and went downhill, because now he had nothing to lose. He'd already drunk everything he could. And then the day came. Alex couldn't make up his mind to tell Sarah that her mom was waiting for her for a couple of weeks. He knew there was no turning back. It was only after Emily's words that his eyes opened. He started looking at Sarah's drawings. It was the same picture everywhere, a little girl walking with her mother. And in the evenings, the little girl was sad, the toys did not please her. Now he noticed Laura's strange behavior. In his presence, she was affectionate with the girl. But when Alex deliberately stayed behind the open door and began to listen, he was simply stunned. Laura shouted loudly, "Eat your soup, girl, and go to your room. Don't win to me over. I'm so sick of you. You're going out with your daddy and I don't have time." That was the decisive moment. Alex immediately entered the apartment again. Laura even jumped. She thought he had left a long time ago. The man took Sarah in his arms and told her, "Sunshine, remember what the fairy promised you to fulfill your cherished wish. You wrote it on a piece of paper. Do you still want it to come true?" Sarah was immediately excited. "Yes, very much so. I miss my mom so much. I don't feel good without her." "How do you know about the wish?" "Aunt Fairy promised she wouldn't tell anyone." "Are you going to scold me now?" Alex stroked the little girl's head. She didn't. She honored it. "Track down your mommy. Your mommy is waiting for you. Let's go to right now. I'm not going to scold anyone. On the contrary, I want you to be happy and smile." They squealed with joy and clapped their hands. "I will see my mommy and live with her. Yay." The man sighed heavily and kissed the little girl. He was so sorry to part with her. "I love you, sweetheart, but I want you to be happy. You can't do that without your own mommy. So let's go. She's waiting for you, and she's very worried." He looked at Laura and said, "And we'll talk to you later tonight." I have a lot of questions for you. I don't want to start in front of the baby." So the woman listened to him and cheered to herself, "Hurrah, I'm finally rid of that girl. She won't be in the house anymore. Now we'll live as before, for ourselves, and no one will interfere. Alex will go away and forget all about it, but it'll be a lesson to him not to take in a foster kid." Ashley was just teaching Ben how to play dominoes. Emily was setting the table in the kitchen. The doorbell rang. Alex stood on the doorstep, pale as a sheet, holding Sarah's hand. Emily immediately let them in. The girl saw her mother in the room and rushed to her without even taking off her shoes. She climbed into her arms, hugging her and crying. Ashley also covered every millimeter of her face with kisses and whispered, "My darling little girl, my little sunshine, my little baby girl. I missed you so much. I'm so glad we're together again. Sweetie, don't worry. Mommy never forgot about you for a second. I love you so much. You're the dearest person I've ever met. How are you, my little flower? Didn't anyone hurt you?" The girl calmed down in her mother's arms and began to tell. It was bad at the orphanage. Boys called me names and pulled my pigtails. And I wanted to eat all the time. The food there was so bad. But when Alex's dad took me away, nobody hurt me anymore. He was good and kind, bought me toys, delicious cakes, and took me to the circus. There were animals and a trained bear. But Mama Laura was bad. She didn't hurt me, but she swore and nagged me all the time. She doesn't like anyone. And then Aunt Fairy came and promised to fulfill my wish. And it did come true. I found you. Mommy will always be together now. I don't want to be without you." The child clung to his mother so sincerely, so tightly, that Alex's heart trembled, and he slowly left without saying goodbye. He couldn't bear to part with Sarah, but there was no other way out. He decided to help her in another way, to do whatever it took to get Ashley back on her feet and raise her daughter on her own. But first he was going to deal with Laura and bring her out into the open. He was sure she'd hit Ashley. It all fit. The man walked resolutely into his apartment. The bathroom was in semi-darkness, lit by candlelight. Laura lounged in the bubble bath, humming a tune to herself. She imagined how hot tonight would be without the annoying foreign girl, on whom Alex spent all his time. Now everything would change, and no one would interfere with their happiness. But Laura's dreams were not destined to come true. Alex abruptly opened the bathroom door. The woman was happy and waved him with a finger, but he only closed the faucet and commanded, "All water procedures are finished for today. Come out. We need to talk." This conversation did not bode well. Laura hastily wiped herself off and went into the room. Alex extinguished all the candles, turned on the light, opened the window wide open, and asked her forehead, "I know you hit a woman 3 months ago. And you told me you hit a dog on the highway. I saw the victim. She has become disabled and is going to sue. There's proof, camera footage, witnesses, and they've already sketched you. So, don't you want to tell me anything? Repent?" Alex asked specifically to get Laura to come clean. He succeeded. She became very nervous. Her good mood immediately disappeared. The woman began to make excuses and justifications. "Yes, I hit that woman. My friends and I had a little too much to drink. It was Irina's anniversary, remember? I didn't see the green light. I sped off, and here she comes. I didn't realize how it happened. I was really scared. I looked around. No one was there. Lucky me. It was late, so I left quickly. Now, what do you think I should have done? Call the police to have me locked up. I still can't sleep well from the stress, by the way. And we've already fixed the car. It's not like anyone died." Alex couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed Laura by the hem of her robe and shouted, "What a soulless bitch you are. And I had no idea who I was living with. Nobody died. And the fact that this woman is now confined to a wheelchair is nothing. A small thing. What were you supposed to do? At least call an ambulance. And you went on with your life as if nothing had happened. I've run out of patience. I'll go to the police tomorrow and tell them everything. And you'll go to jail as you should. Now pack your things and go away. I can't see you anymore. Do you know who Sarah's mother really is? That's the handicapped woman you ran over. You didn't even want the girl. You were glad when they took her away. You're an unfeeling log, Laura. You don't love anyone. I don't know how blind I've been, how I failed to see. Thank Emily for opening my eyes. Laura screamed hysterically. So it's that doctor's work. I knew it. I didn't like her right away. There was something wrong with everything. I was the fool who gave her the address of the girl's mother to find her. I didn't think it would come back to bite me in the ass. I just didn't want Sarah to live with us anymore. She's a stranger to us. How could I possibly love her? Alex, let's just chill out. I don't want to go to jail. You know I have a migraine. I can't stand it and I'll die. Where would I go? Are you suggesting I go to my mother's house in the village? I don't want to go to that shithole. I love you, Alex. Forgive me. Let's forget everything and live like we used to. Just you and me. Laura whirled around her fiancé in a husky voice, still hoping to coax forgiveness. She reached up to kiss him, but he clenched his fists and turned white. Laura, go away at once. Don't make me sin. It's over between us. I can't see you anymore. I'm sick of your lies. Laura had to pack her suitcase and call a cab. There was nothing to be done. Alex locked himself in the bedroom. He drank cognac, stroked Sarah's stuffed bunny, looked at the girl's drawings on the wall, and cried, mentally letting go of his favorite little girl. He had no idea how much it hurt. His whole life had crumbled in an instant. His fiancée had betrayed him. His daughter was gone. Alex was determined. He convinced Ashley to go to the police and tell them everything. The case had been reopened, and now Laura was facing a serious sentence for hitting a pedestrian and leaving the scene of an accident. At the trial, she kept pressing on pity, even tried to bribe the judges. She failed. The heartless woman received 6 years in a penal colony. It will be for her a good lesson for life, and will make her think about the price of human life. And Alex also dealt with the head of the orphanage. He resolutely entered the office. Nina Petrovna sat down opposite, and he began. And how could you do this? Tell me, why didn't you tell me that Sarah's mother is not a drunkard or a streetwalker at all? She's a normal woman who loves her daughter. You knew Ashley was already hurt, disabled, and instead of helping her, you decided to sell the girl for more money. Nina Petrovna laughed angrily. Look at that. He's going to make claims against me. He himself cried that he was childless, that he liked the girl. I went along with it. So now I'm to blame. That's how I help people. A mother can't take care of herself, let alone look after a girl. I wanted what was best for her. Alex almost shouted. He was shaking from such insolence of the headmistress. And I see you already have everything going on in the same way. And my case is not the first. I was not lazy. I pulled up the files in the archive. And there are blatant violations. And if I tell all this to the prosecutor's office, you'll be in trouble. I think they will be very surprised, where the head of the orphanage has real estate abroad, how much money she bought it with her salary. The woman's face changed. She drank a glass of water and began to beg. What are you saying, Alex? That you don't need to go to any prosecutor's office. I'll do everything as you want. The man thought it true. You terminate the adoption and reinstate Ashley's rights and return the child to her. Otherwise, I promise you'll be in trouble. Everyone will know about your dirty deeds. The superintendent was very frightened. She did as she was asked and wrote a statement at her own expense and left town, fearing that her other dark deeds would not come to light. In the meantime, Emily wasn't sitting idly by either. She'd gotten Ashley to consult with Professor Prohorov through a friend at the hospital. He was a luminary in the field of spinal disease and trauma. It was such luck, because you had to make an appointment with him in advance. The doctor looked at Ashley, did a second CT scan, x-rays, took tests, and in a week, he rejoiced the woman. Well, my dear, you are lucky. You have a good chance of getting back on your feet. But you'll need a complicated operation. You'll have to pay for it. The materials are very expensive. Imported. We can already see a special structure that will hold your spine and allow you to walk. Ashley asked fearfully, and how much will the surgery cost? I'm disabled. I don't have a lot of money. The doctor announced the cost, and the woman felt sick to her stomach. It was cosmic by her standards, but Ashley still agreed to the surgery and signed up. She just couldn't miss such a chance, even though she had no idea where she would get such money. Emily was waiting for her in the hallway. Ashley started to tell her everything and asked, "Why do you sell Grandma's house? I don't think they'd pay much for it, but I don't have anything else." They won't approve a loan either. I'm not working. The surgery's in 20 days. I gotta make a deposit. Do you know who I can borrow that much from? As soon as I get back on my feet, I'll work it all off and pay back every penny. Emily replied, I think I do. Wait for me here, I'll be right back. Cheer up, we're almost there. She stepped aside and started dialing Alex. She told him everything and begged him to help. Ashley answered immediately. He was already feeling guilty about his fiance's treatment of Ashley, so the man was only too happy to help. Emily dictated the details of the clinic to him, and Alex paid for the surgery without hesitation. Ashley was happy. She thanked the man. She cried for a long time. She couldn't believe that soon she would be able to get up from her hated wheelchair. And the surgery was a success, but there was a long rehabilitation ahead. All the while, Emily and Alex took care of Sarah together and visited Ashley at the clinic and became very close. Ben began to reach out to him as well. He was sorely missing his father's love, and the man who dreamed so much of having children was happy to take care of the kids. They played war games, police games, and mother-daughter games if she wanted. Emily looked at it and wondered what his fiancée Laura was missing. After all, Alex was such a wonderful man, smart, kind, and very fond of children. She involuntarily began to look at him and respected him more and more. Alex himself also began to look at the doctor differently. At first, he was very angry with her. After all, she had unwittingly destroyed his family. Everything had gone to the abyss. Now, when he saw how Sarah loved her mother, how she longed for her, he realized that Emily had done everything right. After all, the bitter truth, no matter how you look at it, is better than a sweet lie. Alex marveled at Emily's fortitude and mercy. She herself had experienced grief not so long ago. She'd taken on Ashley's care and sheltered him. Month after month flew by. Alex and Emily's relationship grew warmer and warmer. There was an irresistible attraction. They were drawn to each other like a magnet. But the woman kept in her heart the memory of her husband and could not betray Michael. When Ashley's health almost improved, Alex suggested to Emily to make one more surprise. Listen, why don't we go away this weekend? See what kind of grandmother's house she are going to live in. Ashley mentioned once that it's not being renovated. We should do it while we still have time, because it's going to be a while before we can lift anything heavier than a spoon. Besides, her birthday's coming up. Let's make her happy. I can't have Sarah living in bad conditions. She lives in my heart now, and I will continue to take care of her. Emily gladly accepted the offer, and they drove to the suburb, Red Hill Township, on their day off. Ashley gave them the keys to the cabin, told them what was there and how it was located. And again, she thanked them for caring. For Ben, it was a whole trip. He turned his head left and right, looking at the new area with interest, beautiful carved windows of houses, fences with patterns. Finally, we arrived at the place. The house turned out to be neglected. No one had lived there for a long time, but it was strong and good. There were outbuildings and a cellar in the yard. It was obvious that a good owner had once lived here. Alex inspected everything inside and made a verdict. Everything is not bad. We just need to bring in communications and freshen up the repairs, and clean up the grounds. I'll do it tomorrow, hire a crew. I think we can do it in a month, just in time for her birthday. We'll set up Sarah's nursery. I'll buy everything we need. You can help me pick it out. Because as a man, I don't know much. What do little princesses want? And you, as an experienced fairy, will do a great job. They walked around the village some more, and on the way back, they stopped in the woods to look at a meadow of snowdrops. Emily told Ben that these beautiful flowers were in the Red Book, and that it was not necessary to pick them, but you can admire them and take pictures. Alex taught little Ben how to use the camera on his phone to get a good picture. The little guy loved it. He was having fun and commanded, "Come on, Mommy, Uncle X, get up close. Smile. Here comes the bird." Look how it all came together. Later, Ben and Alex were trying to capture a woodpecker at the very top of the tree. They studied someone's burrow with interest, wondering who might be living there. Everyone was so good together, so relaxed, as if they were a family. Even the little boy noticed this and said with childlike sincerity, holding both his mother's and Alex's hand, "Uncle Alex, come live with us. I like you, You're just as kind and good as Daddy," and Mommy started laughing again. "She doesn't scream at night anymore. Will you teach me how to shoot a pew? I got one a long time ago, but Mom doesn't let me play with it without adults." Alex felt warm from these sincere words of a child. He answered, "Of course I will teach you. We'll be with you like in a fairy tale about heroes, who will shoot the arrow farther. And what if we meet a sorceress? I'm fine with you and Mom too. But you know what? I think you should move in with me. I'm sad alone. Doesn't our mom mind? Because we decided everything man to man, and we didn't ask her. Mom, do you mind?" Emily laughed and said, "Here, Ashley. We'll move it ourselves. We'll decide at home. What a conspiracy." Emily happily agreed to help with the renovation, and they enthusiastically set to work. Sure, they picked out furniture and wallpaper and desks for classes. These common concerns brought her and Alex even closer together. They often visited Ashley's cabin together to see how the work was going. Soon it was so nice and cozy. They decorated the nursery in delicate colors in the style of a little princess. After all, the girl loved fairy tales and princesses the most. Ashley was supposed to move in tomorrow. Emily and Alex were making preparations. They wanted Ashley to remember her birthday as the happiest day of her life. Emily was just hanging balloons. She staggered and fell off her chair. Alex picked her up just in time. Somehow it happened by itself that he hugged the woman tightly and suddenly, without expecting himself, kissed her. He even squeezed his eyes shut, afraid that Emily would push him away, slap him. But she could not resist the mutual attraction and responded to the kiss. Alex whispered to her, "Emily, honey, how long have I waited for this? Thank you for not chasing me away. More than anything, I want to be near you and Ben, to live together, to be part of your family. I know you miss your husband. I know how hard it must be for you to make this change. If you're not ready, I'll wait as long as it takes. But I need to know exactly who I am to you. Am I just a friend, an acquaintance? Or can I hope for more?" The woman herself didn't realize what she was doing. Her heart was beating frantically. She answered honestly, "I love my husband very much, and after his death I didn't even look at anyone else. I lived for my son. But our unexpected meeting changed everything in my life. At first you were only an acquaintance, then a friend. Now I miss you. If you're not here, I feel sad. I rejoice every time we meet. I see how your son reaches out to you, how much attention you pay to him. I think we can make it work. Just don't rush me, please. I need time." Alex was very excited. He was ready to wait, for he realized that he needed this woman. Now he realized what a mistake his relationship with Laura had been. Emily was something else entirely, a caring hostess. For her, family came first. With her, he was ready to grow old, to share sorrow and joy together, to raise Ben. Ashley's birthday had arrived. She was already walking with a cane. Her daughter never left her side. The little girl had prepared a present for her mother, a beautiful picture. Alex helped to frame it, and together they learned a poem for Mom. Ashley was awakened by her favorite baby voice. It was very early. It was still just dawn. Her daughter looked at her cryptically and said, "Sweet Mommy, there's no one like you. Be always beautiful, but don't get sick. My daughter wishes you happy birthday and wishes you joy, happiness and luck. Dear Mom, this is my present for you. I've been drawing for 3 days. Look, this is you in a red dress. This is me with pigtails. And this is our dog. I'm dying to have a furry friend. Do you like it? I got up so early to be the first to congratulate you." Ashley cried. She hugged her little girl and started kissing her, whispering, "Thank you for the congratulations, my sunshine. I am so pleased. What a beautiful picture. Who's that?" "A hedgehog, carrying an apple on his back. I don't mind a dog. When we get stronger and move to Grandma's house, we'll get a dog." But that wasn't all the surprises. Emily and Alex also congratulated Ashley, wished her good health, and cryptically said, "Well, lucky you. Get dressed. Let's go see our present with Emily. We really hope you and your daughter like everything." The woman was intrigued. No one had ever given her any gifts at all except her late husband, and Adam was in no hurry to please her. She was impatient and excited to be on her way. She realized it was about her grandmother's house. but it was going to need a lot of repairs. Of course, it was possible to move in, to do it gradually, but it would be hard, especially at first. All these thoughts were swirling in her head. Ashley realized that she couldn't sit on Emily and Alex's neck forever. It was time for her and her daughter to move out and get their own place. These kind, compassionate people had become closer to her family. They had done so much for her. She was very grateful to them. But when she saw what a surprise her best friends had prepared for her, she was aghast. She looked at it and didn't recognize it. Grandma's old house, beautiful, fresh, painted shutters on the windows, clean in the yard, new doors. But when they went inside, Ashley cried with surprise. How comfortable and cozy it was. 2 rooms instead of a dusty pantry, a bathroom and toilet, steam heat. The stove was left, but it was tiled with beautiful mosaics. Sarah was talking too, and all I could hear was, "Wow. This is my room now. Ben, look, it's like a princess's castle, and you and your mom will come to visit. It's beautiful." Ashley rushed over to hug Emily and Alex. She babbled, "Guys, this is all from me. You guys are the best. I never dreamed this would happen. Thank you, darlings. This is the best birthday party of my life. Oh my God, what a waste. Don't worry, I'm gonna get a job. I'll pay you back little by little." Alex shook his head negatively. "Ashley, happy birthday. This is our present to you and Emily. You don't have to give anything back. You have to understand Sarah will never be a stranger to me again. I've had a crush on her since the orphanage. That's why I want that beautiful little girl to have a normal life. That's all. All right, that's enough crying. Bring the bags from the car. We'll celebrate the housewarming and birthday all at once." And the neighbor came over, an old grandmother, Aunt Martha. She said hello, wished Ashley a happy birthday, and said, "I remember you, Ashley, as a little girl. You used to come to visit your grandmother a lot, and now you're all grown up now with a daughter of your own. It's good of you to come home. Grandma Rose would love to have her granddaughter come home to live with her. Well, why did I come to see her? And how can you have a house swarming without a cat? That's not good. You must have a cat in the house. You must let it through the threshold. Then happiness will settle in the house. And my Merca just coughed 2 months ago. Here, take it as a present. Look how nice it is, smoky and clean." Sarah immediately picked up the kitten and began stroking and kissing it. "Mommy, we're going to take him, aren't we?" "Yes, we'll call him Smokey." "What a funny pink nose," Ashley agreed. "And fluffy." The kitten immediately scurried under the girl's bed. He was still very afraid of people. Then they celebrated the birthday together, having fun, the children playing with the kitten, and Aunt Martha sharing memories of Ashley's grandmother's life. The woman was perfectly happy. Her life was finally getting better. She's back on her feet. But her daughter was around again. But without the help and support of her friends, it would never have happened. She was genuinely happy that Emily and Alex were doing well too, and wished the couple nothing but happiness. These people had become a second family to her, one that she cherished so much. The waitress froze upon finding the little girl's note. There wasn't a second to wait. It all started with the note. Linda sat in the staff room on a plastic stool with her back against the cold wall. In her hand, she held a scrap of white tissue. She didn't need to read the lines again, hastily scrawled in childish handwriting. Linda had memorized the short, poignant text by heart. "My name is Cassandra. Please help me. I'm in danger." The many exclamation points made the message literally scream. It was a scream, a cry for help. Linda, of course, immediately realized who had left the note. The same girl. It was impossible not to notice her. Slim, pale, very pretty. Long hair the color of melted chocolate, gathered in a low ponytail. Big brown eyes. A sweet girl of 12, but not quite ordinary, of course. It was not without reason that Linda had noticed her as soon as she entered the cafe, accompanied by her parents. The girl, now Linda knew that her name was Cassandra, was brought to the cafe late enough, almost at closing time. There were few customers. Cassandra was accompanied by 2 adults, her mother and father, who were obviously very wealthy people. Linda realized that at once. And it wasn't even about their appearance. Today, everyone dressed stylishly and beautifully. You can't tell much from their clothes. The man's gaze was imperious and a little arrogant. He obviously felt himself the master of life, and his wife's gaze showed contempt for others. An unpleasant couple. No, not all wealthy people, of course, seemed so disgusting to Linda. But these. They belonged to a special class of customers, rich, cold, and always dissatisfied with the service or the quality of food. Linda had been working in this cafe as a waitress for almost 7 years. During this time, she had learned to be a very good judge of people. You learn it here, when your salary depends on it. Any mistake, a cranky customer will file a complaint against the waitress, and then this month's bonus will not be seen. And Linda didn't live large anyway. Every penny counted. Behind the important couple walked the quiet girl, Cassandra. It seemed strange at once. Usually children and parents walk together. Or they let the children go first, because this was a family cafe. Linda had seen many families, but here her daughter stepped behind her parents silently, indifferently, like a shadow. The family was seated at a table in the center of the room. Linda walked over to offer the menu to the guests. The father nodded without giving the waitress a glance. Linda stepped back. No need to stand over people's heads. When they were ready to order, they'd call for it. The waitress had a lot to do. Closing soon, she needed to wipe down the bar and arrange the dishes neatly on the shelves. And from a distance, she watched the customers. Linda noticed at once that the girl was dressed a little too strangely. It's July, and the heat is so hot that the air conditioners can't cope with the load. It gets a little fresher in the evening, but it's still stuffy outside. And the girl is dressed like autumn, long dark trousers, trainers, long-sleeved t-shirt. Maybe that's the fashion of teenagers nowadays. No, it didn't look like that. Linda had seen a lot of kids. On the contrary, in summer, girls of that age tend to emphasize their youth and beauty with more open and tight-fitting outfits. There are, of course, representatives of different subcultures. Linda didn't know much about it, who were the goths and who else. But this girl didn't look like them either. Non-formals usually decorated themselves with bracelets and other accessories with symbols, dyed their hair in bright colors, applied eye-catching makeup. Linda was fine with it. Youth went else to experiment with appearance. This girl, Cassandra, looked more like a recluse. Closed black clothes, no makeup, her eyes mostly downcast. A disturbing sight, unfamiliar. There was no energy in this child, no cheerfulness, no curiosity. Linda thought at the time maybe the girl was sick. She had seen such children with special developmental needs. The man ordered coffee for himself and his wife, a milkshake for his daughter, and pancakes with fruit fillings. The family hurriedly ate dinner. Linda was minding her own business, but she kept glancing at the visitors, especially the girl. Cassandra ate the delicious pancakes without enthusiasm. It seemed that she did not do it for pleasure, but simply because it was necessary. Not a single emotion on her pale, pretty face. The parents talked to each other, even smiled, but neither of them ever addressed their daughter, as if she didn't exist. Linda mentally sympathized with the child. She herself had the same indifferent and cold father, who did not notice his only daughter and was not interested in her affairs. But her mother successfully replaced both parents. She would listen to her, take pity, and support her when necessary. Mom worked hard, but always felt when her daughter needed help. Linda, in her 40s, still could not fully come to terms with the fact that Mom is no longer there. Her father is alive, but he lives in another city and has a new family. He had never paid attention to his daughter before, and now it was as if they were neither relatives. Linda did not regret it, probably because from the very beginning she and her father had not developed a warm and close relationship. She was used to it. In this family that visited the cafe before closing time, both parents behaved coldly and aloofly with their daughter. It was as if the child didn't exist. During the entire dinner, the father had only paid attention to Cassandra once, when she had accidentally elbowed his coffee cup. A few drops of the drink spilled out onto the table. The girl immediately shrank back, clearly expecting punishment. Linda could clearly see it in the movement of her thin, sharp shoulders. The father said something sharply and offensively to his daughter, and gave her a look as if she were not a child but a disgusting but not dangerous insect. The mother shook her head contritely, saying, "There you go, you've ruined everything again, you clumsy girl." Unpleasant parents. What else can I say? But mothers and fathers do not choose what they got. They can be worse to live with. Orphanages are full of kids, and there's a lot of street kids on the streets. And there are also dysfunctional families, in which the little ones also have a hard life. But it's a girl. At least she does not starve and does not walk in worn-out clothes. The family slowly left the cafe in the same order they had entered, Nicholas and Jen in front, Cassandra behind them like a pale shadow. Linda closed the door behind them. The establishment's working day had come to an end. This is a family cafe, not a late-night bar. Linda stretched and exhaled in relief. Finally, this long, hard day was over. There had been a lot of visitors today. The woman was tired. All that was left was to tidy up, sweep up, pick up the rubbish from the floor, and she could go home. And there is a cozy sofa in front of the TV, a fluffy plaid, and her favorite cats, Red Punky and White Zephyr. By the age of 40, Linda had not found her family and was not worried about it at all. Now she wasn't, but now she was humbled by the pain. But once the news that she would never become a mother turned her whole world upside down. She loved children, adored babies since childhood, often saw herself in her dreams as a mother of many children. Even the names of future sons and daughters long ago chose. But the woman managed to pull herself together and find other joys in life. Only here she still loved children very much. That's why she got a job in a family cafe. Small visitors, it seems, felt the favor of the smiling waitress and frankly reached out to her. She was the favorite employee of the cafe with the young guests of the institution. She would joke, she would calm them down. And like Cassandra, she would motivate them to eat a dish that was not too tasty but healthy. The happy parents often wrote compliments to Linda in the book, and she was pleased. Linda had already wiped down all the tables except the one where the last customers were sitting. It was his turn. That's when the woman noticed the note. It was scribbled in red pencil on a scrap of napkin. In the children's cafe, each table had a cup of colored pencils for boys and girls who liked to draw. There was also paper lying here, but they were large sheets, so the girl chose a napkin. The napkin was small, inconspicuous, and fit easily under the spice rack. Linda read Cassandra's poignant text. The girl wasn't sick at all. She was in danger. She needed help. It was not for nothing that the little girl immediately struck the woman as unusual. And now Linda was sitting in the small house, holding a piece of napkin in her hands, and desperately thinking about what to do next. The only solution that came to mind was to go to the police. But it was a little scary. Something told her that it was unlikely that her application would be taken seriously. And the woman had not learned to shout and scandalize, getting her own way, although she should have learned to do so by the time she was 40 years old. Linda was worried about something else if the police did not believe her. What to do next? She couldn't leave her child in danger. Linda realized that she couldn't just move on with her life if she didn't help Cassandra. She would constantly think about the girl's faded gaze, her panic and skinny figure. How do you live knowing that somewhere a child is suffering who has come to you for help? Linda quickly finished her business at the cafe and hailed a taxi. In her handbag was that very note. She would show it to the police right away. They have to look into it. They just have to. But as Linda had hoped, the station didn't take her words seriously. "She's just attracting attention," grinned the investigator with tired eyes. "I have a daughter the same age, and she's always making up things to get attention. Books, soap operas all mess with her head." "You don't understand," Linda objected. That girl didn't look like she was joking. She had those scared eyes. "Well, she's a good actress." The uniformed man was clearly anxious to get rid of the annoying visitor. He probably had enough work to do without her. "Still, take a statement, check the family." "On what grounds?" asked the investigator. "Did you personally see any of the parents hitting the child or insulting him at least?" Linda shook her head negatively. She already realized that she was unlikely to get anything out of this policeman. He was unwilling to take her seriously. "Look at that note again," Linda insisted. "It's a cry for help." "It's a stupid joke." Believe me, the man shook his head. "I've got a lot more serious things to do here. And you and your note." "What am I to do?" Linda mumbled confusedly. "Go home," replied the investigator, "and throw that note in the bin on your way home and forget about this case. Teenagers do things like that at their age. I'd tell you lots of stories about their weirdness, but I don't have time." Linda walked slowly through the city at night. It was very late, soon to be midnight. Her legs were buzzing with fatigue, but the woman thought of only one thing: how to save the girl. Could this note on the napkin be Cassandra's last chance for salvation? The girl is being bullied by her parents, that much is clear. For Cassandra hid the note from them. What's going on behind the door of their house or flat? What kind of torment is this child enduring? What if the policeman is right, and this is all just a stupid prank? Maybe the parents were only being cold to Cassandra because she's being punished for some similar act. She wanted so badly to believe it and calm down, but Linda saw the look in the girl's eyes. That's hard to play. That child is unhappy, truly unhappy. Linda had a sixth sense of it even before she found the note. "I guess I'll have to call," Linda said aloud. Yes, it wasn't an easy decision, but what to do? We had to save the baby, and all means were good for that. Will would definitely help. At least that's the only one of Linda's acquaintances who had such an opportunity, Will. He used to be the closest thing she had to a man. It's funny to think of it now, but years ago she thought he was perfect. Well, the guy seemed so perfect to her, tall, athletic, driven. They met at the grocery shop where Linda worked as a clerk. It was just a small shop selling all sorts of things: groceries, household chemicals, stationery, small things that people in the neighborhood might need at any moment. Will was one of those residents. He often came into the shop for cigarettes, beer, or dumplings. Linda liked this cheerful boy, always cheerful, polite, neatly and stylishly dressed. Sometimes Will appeared alone, sometimes with his mates. Linda realized he didn't have a girlfriend. Not yet. And that made her happy, although she didn't understand why at the time. One day Will came into the shop a little tipsy, a slightly tortured look, a happy smile. Linda didn't find it unpleasant, on the contrary, even a little amusing. "Girl, don't look that I'm a little drunk," Will said. "I'm not a drunkard. I just found out today that I'm being promoted to lieutenant. So I'm excited. I've waited so long for this." "I didn't think anything bad of you," Linda smiled at the handsome visitor. And it was the truth. "I'm happy for you. Congratulations. I've dreamed of working for the police since I was a kid, catching criminals and all that. I must have seen a lot of films. But they told me I couldn't do it because of my health. And because my father was in prison. I didn't really know him. He's been traveling around the colonies all his life. And yet, just like that. But I still dreamed. So I went to law school," Will continued. "I got in, by the way, and worked at the station as a counselor for a couple of years in a non-certified position for pennies. And finally, today I was shown the order, and I was promoted." There were no other visitors in the shop, so Linda listened to Will quietly, in no hurry. It was very pleasant to talk to a handsome guy like that. It was interesting to learn something personal about him. Turns out Will had a dream. And now it's finally come true. "It's so nice when dreams come true," Linda smiled. "But if you want something badly enough, it always happens. Do you?" Will looked intently into the eyes of the young saleswoman. That look made Linda's heart flutter, and goosebumps ran down her spine. "Are you dreaming about something too?" Linda was confused. Yes, she had a dream. But to tell Will's innermost thoughts to a drunken Will now, how could I do that? It's too personal. Linda was living alone by then. Her father had moved to another city and had a new family. Linda wondered whether her parents were just as indifferent and cold with the children of their passions, or whether they were trying to pretend friendliness in order to appear better than they really were. Mum was gone. The still young woman left suddenly, right at work. She had a heart attack. At the time of the tragedy, Linda was already an adult. She was studying at a pedagogical university and was going to become a history teacher. Linda adored children and was able to find a common language with them. It was her mother who advised her daughter to study to become a teacher. "You go straight to the teacher," repeatedly said her mother. "People like you should definitely go to school." Linda nodded her head in agreement. Yes, her mother was right. Linda's place was with the children. After her father left, Linda's mother had a hard time. There was a catastrophic lack of money. That's when she started working double shifts. It was necessary to put her daughter on her feet. There was no hope for her ex-husband in this respect. No, until Linda's 18th birthday he paid child support. But as soon as the girl came of age, all help stopped. Heron pulled the mother from the last strength to feed herself and her daughter. The work was hard, physically exhausting. Linda felt sorry for her parents, tried to help her in everything. She even wanted to drop out of university to get a job. But her mother was categorical in this matter. And do not think we'll live somehow. It's nothing. How long do you have left to study? You'll get a higher education, you'll become a teacher, a respected man. You won't have to work with your hands like me, ruining your health. Linda decided that she would definitely become a teacher. And not just any teacher, but the best. She would go to work in a gymnasium where they paid more, and her mother would no longer have to work so hard. But Mom didn't live to see it. When Linda was a student, she was left all alone in the world, and she had to leave the university. Linda had to provide for herself. So she got a job as a clerk in a shop in the courtyard. There was no thought of lost opportunities. Diploma, education, career as a teacher, all this became somehow unimportant against the background of the grief that fell on Linda. Mom was her nearest and dearest person. She loved her daughter so much, understood her so well, cared for her, supported her. And now Linda felt lost, as if she had lost her footing. To herself, she seemed thin, fragile, freezing, lonely and sad. No one loved her anymore. No one cared how she felt. And ever since then, Linda only dreamed of having someone close to her, someone who understood and accepted her. Someone with whom she could share her joys and sorrows. The girl dreamed of a family, of a kind and handsome husband, at least 3 children, that the flat was warm, noisy and cheerful. It is unbearable to live alone, not even a word with whom to exchange. I can't tell well about this secret dream, though I want to reveal my soul to someone. And here the guy himself is interested. He is looking at her attentively and obviously waiting for an answer. Well, I was not. I dream of a family, said the girl and immediately lowered her eyes. A family, Will sounded surprised. He suddenly looked at Linda with warmth and sympathy. The girl even felt a little lighter in her heart. Will. It was as if he understood at once. Is it hard? Linda nodded. Yes, it was hard. It was hard to live without her mother, to cope with everything alone, and to realize that no one cared about you. No one at all. Orphans are at least placed in foster care. They're looking for adults to look after them. And Linda's kind of an adult herself, so she should be able to handle things on her own. And it doesn't matter that she's just over 20, and she has no life experience at all. Somewhat unnoticed by herself, Linda told Will her story. He listened attentively, didn't interrupt. He nodded somewhere, or put a phrase in the right place. Linda could see that he was really interested in all this. He wasn't wasting his time on her out of politeness. You know, why don't we go for a walk sometime? Will suddenly suggested it. Not sometime, but tomorrow. I'm not really in shape today. What time do you get off work? Night shift, 8. I'll be there at 8 tomorrow, Will smiled. You know, I've liked you for a long time. Pretty, very modest, quiet. Not like the other girls. But I've been hesitant to talk to you. I thought you'd send me away. But now, after everything you've told me, I realize what you're like. Well, can I pick you up tomorrow? Come in, Linda nodded, amazed. Will called her beautiful and even asked her out on a date. Is that what's really going on? The girl spent the next 24 hours in joyful anticipation of the evening, but she was also anxious. Well, sure. What if Will just called her out of pity? Or because he'd been drinking, and now he regrets what he did? Or maybe he's forgotten all about that conversation. What if Will doesn't show up? But he arrived at 8 o'clock sharp. The young man was waiting for Linda on the porch of the shop with 3 roses in his hand. Linda's heart beat with joy. She had never been given flowers before in her life. It was so nice, it turned out. Will took her to a cafe, and then they walked around the city and talked for a long time. The guy told his companion about himself. I grew up in a large family. What kind of family? A mother of 3 sons. One pulled because her husband was touring prisons. It wasn't a good fit. Stealing, fighting, robbery. The parent loved adventure, and a life of routine depressed him. The mother feared more than anything that one of her children would follow in their father's footsteps. That's why she kept a strict watch over the boys, did not let her sons down. She had plenty of energy and strength, enough for all 3 of them. whether it was their mother's unrelenting supervision or just their genes. But Will and his brothers had all made it in the world. The eldest, Terrence, worked in a car service. The middle one, Jasper, trained as a machinist. I'd always wanted to be a police officer, Will continued, which wasn't a very typical wish for the son of a recidivist. That's why I went to law school after 9th grade, and then even went to university after the army. Everyone said it wouldn't work out. But it did. I'm a lieutenant now, Will rejoiced. Do you like the job? You're not disappointed? Linda asked. On the contrary, it's becoming clearer every day. I realize that I am where I am, Will answered. Linda was genuinely happy for him. He was moving up the career ladder quite quickly, but he had to work hard. Will was at work 24 hours a day. Sometimes he was called suddenly, and then had to abandon all the planned cases. But Linda treated it all with understanding, didn't beg for attention, and wasn't capricious, as one might expect from a young person. Work is work. Soon they began to live together in the flat that her mother had inherited from her grandmother. Will rented a room nearby. The girl herself suggested moving in together. He was very nice. Will could do everything around the house. Linda with him forgot what is falling off wallpaper or a leaky tap. And he was no stranger to cooking. And other women's chores, laundry, ironing, and so on. Most importantly, Linda finally had a close and understanding person who would listen, understand, support. Will himself had not too simple fate. He understood the girl like no one else. With him, Linda felt like behind a stone wall. Will made a good salary. He gave his girlfriend gifts, clothes, jewelry, handbags, shoes, and cute trinkets that warmed her heart the most. Soft toys, sweets, flowers. With Will, Linda first went to the sea, and then he renovated the flat, transformed it beyond recognition. It was a little sad that now the rooms were not the same as they had been when Mum was there. But at the same time, Linda was relieved that after the renovation there was nothing to remind her of the tragedy and loneliness. It was a fresh start. Then there was a wedding, modest, without a feast in a cafe and a crowd of guests at Linda's place. She simply had no one to invite. Will himself did not want a lavish celebration. However, his mother Nicholas arranged a holiday for the newlyweds, invited them to her house, and set the table. Homemade, delicious food, homemade snacks. They sat in a close family circle, the newlyweds, Will's brothers with their other halves and children, and the head of the family, the mother. Everyone wished the newlyweds to have children as soon as possible, and as many as possible. Will and Linda themselves very much wanted to become parents. The lovers had already discussed this issue many times. We will definitely have a son, Will dreamed. I will be a real father to him. I will spend all my time with him. We'll be best friends, Linda smiled quietly. She understood why Will wanted a son so much. He wants to give him everything he didn't have. First of all, an attentive and caring father. The girl was pleased with this attitude of her beloved, but she herself dreamed of children. At the thought of what a happy, strong family they would have, breathtaking. Linda had recently prepared names for future sons and daughters, and Will, voicing them, approved. Everything was working out just fine, except that the desired pregnancy did not come. At first, the spouses did not worry about it. A month earlier, a month later, what difference does it make? Both worked, arranged their family nest, traveled. They could not afford foreign resorts, but they regularly flew to their native coast every summer. A year passed, then another. Still no heirs. Linda was already panicking, but she didn't want to go to the doctors. It was as if the young woman felt afraid of hearing a serious diagnosis. Will was more optimistic. You're always getting yourself worked up, he reassured his wife. Go, take medication, maybe you have to drink. Everyone heals. I want to hold my son in my arms. Will really dreamed of children. He'd make a great father. And Linda was beginning to feel that her life was too empty and meaningless without babies. But she went to the hospital. At the antenatal clinic, she was given a lot of tests. Linda obediently took everything that was required. The results were almost perfect. Then they sent her for an ultrasound. That's when it all came out. It turned out Linda had a congenital pelvic abnormality. It doesn't interfere with her life, but it does interfere with motherhood. What am I going to do? Linda burst into tears at the doctor's office. A middle-aged woman looked at the girl with sympathy. Honey, do not be upset. Science does not stand still. Maybe someday they'll be able to do an operation that fixes it. But right now, your only option is surrogacy. Linda was relieved when she heard that. Smiling, she thanked the doctor. If she had one chance, she would certainly take it. But at home, Linda carefully studied the information about surrogacy and realized that no, it wasn't for them. The cost is prohibitive and the risks are great. There are so many stories of surrogate mothers not giving their children back to the parents. There's no legal framework, so there's no guarantees. But the main thing is, she and Will just don't have that kind of money, and there's nowhere to get it. That's it. The dream will never come true, Linda told her husband in the evening. For the first time since they had known each other, he looked confused and bewildered. Linda understood what her husband was thinking. She was thinking the same thing herself. How could it be? They were dreaming, planning, hoping. And then all of a sudden this happened. Linda wanted Will, as usual, to put his arm around her, stroke her hair, tell her that everything would be all right. But he said, "I need to be alone," and went into the bedroom. Linda was left alone in the living room with her worries. They then did not talk about it, continued to live, as if by inertia went to work, together at breakfast and dinner, watching TV, lying on the sofa in the evenings. But there was tension between the spouses, which was very hard on both of them. Let's live as we live, Will said one day. You know how much I want to be a father. Do you want kids too? I'm well aware of that. We both need a break. We'll see. Linda nodded. Will's right. What else can they do? Should they live the life they're living? Linda visited several other doctors. The verdict was unequivocal. They all said with one voice that a young woman could not carry a baby on her own, and there was nothing that could be done about it. Somehow Linda gradually came to terms with it. Although it wasn't easy, Will looked as if he too had accepted reality. He was joking again, smiling again. But he didn't talk about future plans anymore. He was a little colder too. Linda looked with horror for signs of her indifferent, aloof father in her beloved. And she did. It was very frightening. The woman calmed herself. After all, they had been married for several years. The period of passionate love has long passed. The passions have subsided. Will has a lot of work to do. He doesn't have time for tenderness. And yet Linda missed the old Will and their easy, light relationship. It was different now. A lot of things were gone. The trust, the warmth, a bright future filled with children's laughter. One day Linda suggested to her husband that he take a child from the orphanage. What about it? Is that an option? How many orphans are there in orphanages in need of parental support? Why not make an underprivileged child happy? Noel shook his head. I don't think so. I don't want to raise the offspring of an alcoholic or a criminal. Genes, they can show up at any moment. And you won't know what kind of child you are. My mom's been scared of me and my brothers all my life. Lucky we didn't take after our father. What if we weren't? Linda didn't argue. She realized that such a big decision had to be made together. Linda herself would have taken someone else's baby as her own. There was so much unspent warmth in her, she wanted to protect and care for the little man. Will made it clear that he only wanted his own child and nothing else. Well, he had every right to take that view. Perhaps I'll be able to change my husband's mind someday, Linda thought. There's always hope. Maybe Linda would succeed sooner or later. Just in case, she studied databases of orphaned children. They were all so sweet, so defenseless, so unremarkable. She wanted to hug and warm each one. But it was too soon. Will wasn't ready to do that yet. But then something happened that rocked Linda's world. Something she never expected. Will came home late from work, as usual. He had been staying out late a lot lately. Will had talked about a lot of things in the pipeline, so he had to work overtime. He looked a little strange. Linda noticed it right away. His eyes lit up with a joyful fire, a smile on his face, which the man tried in vain to hide. Did something happen? Linda asked. She thought her husband had been promoted again, or that he had solved a long-standing case. But Linda had no idea what she would hear in answer to her question. We need to have a serious talk, Will said. The joyful light in his eyes suddenly faded. His face became serious and impenetrable. It was as if the mere sight of his wife had spoiled his mood. He was clearly uncomfortable being around Linda, and it was frightening. "What is it?" Linda looked at her husband anxiously. "Let's sit down, shall we?" And Will, occasionally faltering and looking away, told about everything. And about his worries, unfulfilled dreams of children, about physical and moral fatigue, about the cooling of feelings for the man who once seemed the closest and dearest, and about the mental turmoil about it. It turned out that Will had been hurt and hard lately. Only he tried not to show it. Linda did not notice, because she was absorbed in her own thoughts about unfulfilled plans and dreams. At that very moment, 2 undergraduates were sent to the station where Will worked. The boy was sent to the homicide department, but the girl was attached to Will. He had a lot of routine paperwork to do. So they sent this young lady to be his assistant. The girl was pretty, more than pretty. But Will did not think about anything but work, until one day she confessed her love to him. Jill had looked at Will devotedly during that confession. There were even tears in her eyes. And the man understood that the girl's words were more than sincere. Why would she need him in principle? Not rich, not particularly influential, and he was not handsome. Whatever the case, it turns out that Jill fell in love. That suddenly hurt the man's ego. But such a beautiful girl, and suddenly fell in love with him, a simple investigator. Will, as best he could, explained to the beautiful trainee that they are not a couple, not suitable for each other at all. She needed someone younger, more promising and unmarried at least. But Jill was quite persistent. She was determined to achieve her goal. Of course, one day Will couldn't resist. They became lovers. Linda listened to her husband and slowly died inside. But how could it be? I mean, she believed Will more than she believed herself. She thought they were just going through a rough patch. Anyway, I'd been living between 2 fires for months now, Will continued. He looked unhappy, as if he'd been cheated, betrayed, not betrayed. Perhaps it was his conscience that kept him from being overtly happy. "Well, thank you for the truth," Linda said with difficulty, trying to keep her voice steady and calm. "If you're telling me this, something must have happened. A decision must have been made." Linda hoped that now he would apologize, say that he realized how wrong he had been, that he had made a mistake, that he had lost his temper, that he was sorry, and Linda would forgive him. Of course she would. It'll take time to get back to the way things were, but together they'll get through it. Who doesn't make mistakes? "You see, today Jill told me that." Will sighed heavily. "Well, she's expecting a baby. Can you believe it?" Will couldn't help smiling happily. It lit up his face with a warm glow. The man even squared his shoulders, as if he had shrugged off a load of guilt. Linda, on the other hand, folded herself against the sharp pain in her chest. Her breath even caught at the news. Will leave? Of course, now he's going to leave for that Jill. Will had dreamed so much about having children, and here was a young seductress fulfilling his wish. She, Linda, couldn't and wouldn't. Will have a child in his family, maybe even more than one. And Linda will live alone in her mom's flat, just like before. Alone again, abandoned by everyone, unwanted by anyone. "Go away," the woman said quietly. "What?" Will didn't hear her. "Get out of my flat." Will nodded. Then he looked anxiously at his wife. "Are you sure you're going to be all right? Do you think I'm going to do anything to myself because of you?" Linda grinned. To be honest, those were the thoughts that had flashed through her mind in the first few moments. "I'm so sorry. You're good. You don't deserve someone like me," Will said. "You're good too," Linda wanted to scream, but instead she turned round and went into the other room. "You can pick up your stuff tomorrow when I'm at work. Now get out." Will left. Linda sobbed for a long time afterwards, burying her face in his jumper. It was the jumper she'd taken to work early that morning, something to remember her spouse by. For some reason, Linda wanted that, to keep at least one of Will's things with her. She probably still loved him, despite the betrayal. They divorced. Linda was alone in her flat again. She had 2 cats to keep her from getting bored. She got one from a shelter and picked up the other one on the street, skinny and hungry. It took a long time to put him back in order, but it was worth it. and Linda quit her job. For some reason, she didn't want to stay in that very shop where she had once met Will. It hurt to be there. Linda found another job. She got a job as a waitress in a family cafe. People with children came here, talking, joking, ordering goodies. Linda, who from an early age loved to take care of children, was able to realize her talents at work. As she looked at all these families, she felt better for some reason. Different faces, different stories, different situations, it somehow distracted her, reminded her that she was not alone in the world. Some little visitors refused to eat. Some were cranky because they had to sit peacefully at the table and wait for the order to arrive, and some were just in a bad mood. Linda had a feel for children. She always knew what to say to a child to cheer them up, to make their little eyes shine with joy. The owner of the cafe appreciated the waitress for the way she knew how to get along with the little ones. Will married Jill and took out a mortgage on a flat for the family, large, spacious, in an upscale neighborhood. His salary allowed him to afford such a payment, as Will was promoted again. Soon he had a son so long awaited, so desirable. And Will kept his promise. He became a wonderful father. Linda met her ex-husband with their young son several times, then at the amusement park, then in the public garden, then in the shopping center. Will gently led the boy, who looked remarkably like him, by the handle and glowed with happiness and pride. It suited him to be a father. Linda was not jealous. She was happy for her ex-husband. Her heart snapped with another longing. It would be great if it was her and Will's son. But Linda wasn't destined to be a mother. Linda didn't want to meet her ex-husband, so when she happened to see him from afar, she turned the other way. Too painful, too awkward. After the divorce, Will had told Linda not to hesitate to contact him if she needed anything. She had nodded in agreement, knowing full well that under no circumstances would she go to Will for help. Not under any circumstances. Not enough for him to do anything for her out of guilt and pity. But it seems like a waste. Will's the only one who can help under the circumstances. He's a police officer, after all, and he's certainly not going to dismiss Linda and her strange story. Linda decided to wait until morning. It was already late at night. She didn't dare to bother Will at such a time. The next day, just before dawn, the woman dialed her ex-husband. "Hello, Will," the woman said when she heard the voice of the man she had once loved. "It seems I finally need your help." "No questions. Come, I'm at work now. I'll tell them to let you in." Will had changed. He'd put on a little weight. His hair had turned gray, and his eyes were peaceful. "Hi," he smiled, rising from his chair for her. A charming, wide smile. It used to send shivers down Linda's spine. And now it was nice to look at Will like that, smiling, friendly. No awkwardness, no tension, anger or resentment. Their meeting had not started the way Linda had imagined. It was as if two friends had accidentally seen each other after a long separation. First, they talked a little about life. It turned out that Will is a father of 2 children. Recently, the family added a daughter. Linda was sincerely happy for her ex-husband, just the kind he'd dreamed of. "So what's going on with you?" Will's eyes suddenly became serious and attentive. "You need my help, don't you?" Linda nodded and told Will everything that had happened to her the day before. She showed him the note the girl had left behind, of course. Now that piece of paper was always in her purse as a reminder that she hadn't imagined what had happened. Wow. Will scrutinized the letters scribbled hastily on the napkin with a pencil. Her parents are probably bullying this kid. If it's her parents at all, and not her kidnappers. I'll get the security tapes now, find out who these people are. We'll get to the bottom of this. Thank you, Linda thanked Will sincerely. It was so nice to feel his support and understanding. She should have been afraid to contact her ex-husband. Will called a day later. Well, we found out who these people are. The man came straight to the point. It's the family of businessman Nicholas Johnson. Nicholas Jones is not the one who owns the dairy? That's the one Will confirmed. Well, not a huge factory, he has a small factory, more like, but their products are sold in many places in the city and are considered to be good. Nicholas Jones is a medium-sized businessman, not an oligarch, but a very wealthy citizen, especially by the standards of their city. A respected man who regularly made charitable donations and participated in campaigns to help the poor. An entrepreneur who led his factory to success with a steady hand. He paid great attention to the quality of dairy products. A frequent character in the local press and an exemplary family man. Nicholas preferred not to talk about his family. He didn't want any of his family to suffer from too much attention. That's how he explained the fact. But Will, of course, found out everything. His wife was a middle-aged lady who had had a bad marriage. Jen came from a poor family. She and Nicholas were once schoolmates. It seems that the future entrepreneur was unrequitedly in love with her. The object of his adoration was the most popular girl in school. So Nicholas, who then became unattractive outwardly, lacked any other merits, had only to dream of a beautiful girl. Time passed. Life has put everything in its place. Nicholas, characterized by diligence in his studies, natural ingenuity and incredible persistence, founded his own dairy mini-empire. He became rich and even famous. The girl, who once occupied all the thoughts of the future businessman, bet on her beauty and lost. Endless dates, outings, a cycle of novels. In the end, Jen was left alone with a newborn daughter in her arms. The father of the baby was not going to recognize the child and somehow participate in his upbringing. He disappeared altogether. Jen raised her daughter alone, and then she had a chance meeting with Nicholas. And whether the businessman's feelings flared up with renewed vigor, or whether they didn't die down at all, perhaps the man simply decided to close his eyes. Anyway, he proposed to a former classmate. She happily grasped him like a drowning man grasping at straws. So they became a family. Nicholas, his high school sweetheart, and her daughter Cassandra. The girl just at that time went to the first grade. At first everything was fine, but later, when Cassandra was going through puberty, she debuted in an illness. It happens sometimes. The girl was given a psychiatric diagnosis. She was pulled out of school, homeschooled. But she didn't seem sick, Linda countered. Weird, yes, but not sick. Smart, conscious Will replied. Well, you're not a psychiatrist. I've seen a lot of things. Sometimes it's completely invisible in people. And then there's a fit of aggression or delirium. It's a scary thing. I don't know. So your note is just a manifestation of illness. Cassandra is sick, and very sick. And her family, she's a model. The girl is clothed. She goes to rehab, camps. Nicholas spares no expense. Often travels with her parents. She's doing well. There's no reason to mess with this family. No legal reason, I mean. So there you go. I did the best I could. Thank you, Linda thanked her ex-husband. Somehow she couldn't believe in the truth of the information he had obtained. It all seemed like some kind of beautiful facade. What was behind it? That was anybody's guess. Cassandra may be sick. But she's unhappy with her family and very afraid of her parents. You can tell. Will, can you give me the Johnson's home address, please? What's that for? The man was wary. I'm not going to spy on them or anything. No, of course not. I just want to get another look at the girl, just a glimpse of her, to make sure I wasn't imagining it, her battered look, the intimidation in her eyes. It's weird, but okay, write it down. Just be careful. And if you have any problems, call me right away. An hour later, Linda was standing in front of Nicholas' mansion. It was her day off, so the woman decided to take advantage of her free time. The two-story cottage was located in an elite country village. There were a lot of similar houses. There were real palaces with pointed roofs, annexes, and turrets. Nicholas's mansion was modest enough against the background, but it was very beautiful, stylish, and somehow cozy. It looked like the home of a model family. The house was surrounded not by a hedge, but by a metal lattice, through which the garden, the pool, the playground with swings and slides were clearly visible. The gazebo was just a paradise for a child. The guardianship authorities, seeing this splendor, would not think that a girl living in such conditions needs help. But Cassandra was in danger. Linda was convinced of that. Will's story was not credible. Linda didn't know what she should do. She just stood there looking round the house. At least this way she was closer to Cassandra. Suddenly, just as Linda was about to leave, the cottage door swung open. She appeared on the porch. The same girl who had written the note on the napkin in despair. Skinny, touching, defenseless, and fragile. Once again, she was wearing a baggy, long-sleeved jumper and jeans. It was a sunny and hot July day. It would have made more sense to see Cassandra in shorts and a tank top, or even a swimming costume. In this heat, you could only splash around in the pool. But no jumper, Jean's strange combination. There were a lot of strange things about this story in general. Linda looked around and called the girl's name. She flinched in surprise, then looked at Linda carefully and seemed to remember her. "Are you the waitress from that cafe? I recognized you. Did you find my note?" Cassandra started the conversation. "Yeah, tell me what's going on with you." "I can't believe one person believed me." The girl clutched at the bars. "You know, wherever I have not left such messages, and on holiday and in local cafes. But no one ever even interested. They probably didn't believe it. You're the first." "Girl, tell me what's going on with you, and how can I help you?" "I'll tell you. But you probably won't believe your stepfather and mother. They always make it sound like it's my fault because I'm supposedly insane. I have an official diagnosis. And you know, no matter what I say, they usually take it as a delusion, as a manifestation of illness." The girl spoke cheerfully and coherently. Linda noted that her speech was well developed, like that of a literate adult. Cassandra looked straight and aware. She did not look like a sick teenager at all. "I believe you, don't worry about it, or I wouldn't be here. It took me some trouble to find your house. You didn't leave an address." "I didn't have time. They're always watching me when we're both in public. It took me a lot of trouble to write that note and leave it. I took a risk. If my stepdad had noticed, he'd have locked me up for months, forbidden me to go out to the garden. It's happened before. And now you will not be noticed, will not be punished for talking to me, a stranger." The girl smiled. "There are only servants in the house, but there is a general cleaning. They do not have time for me. From the windows of the house, this area is not visible. Parents are absent, stepfather at work. Mom's gone to the spa. Won't be back till late tonight. It's a good time to talk." "Tell me about it," Linda asked. "Do you mind if I play the video? It's just that I might need proof. I don't think I can do anything on my own, but I have a friend in the police force. Only he needs hard evidence to make a move." "A friend in the police force is a good thing," the girl said. "It gives me hope. And about the camera? I was going to suggest that myself. If the police don't help, we could put it on the internet or get the press involved. We might need the publicity." Linda was once again struck by the teenage girl's turn of phrase. She switched on the camera on her phone, as long as it had enough charge. "This is going to be a long story." "My name is Cassandra," she began, looking into the lens. "I'm being bullied by my parents. I need your help." "I'm going to tell my story from the beginning," Cassandra said. "I lived with my mother, Jen, in a small, cramped studio flat with a 6-foot kitchen. It was an old 5-story building on the outskirts of town. Right behind it was a vacant lot with a motorway behind it. Money was tight. Jen didn't like to work. From time to time, of course. She had to get a job. The single mom's allowance was enough to live on. She worked as a cleaner and a market clerk. But all these jobs depressed the woman who had dreamed of a beautiful life since high school and thought she deserved it. Jen was a real beauty in her youth. She in adulthood was distinguished by a very favorable appearance, tall, slender, big eyes. She had plenty of admirers at school and now, but the quality of her current suitors didn't suit her. They were all tramps as poor as she was. "Well, it's the environment's fault," Cassandra continued. "As they say, you can't live with the wolves. The places where Jen lived and sometimes worked were not full of princes in white Mercedes. But that's okay, at least the wool from the sheep. The local admirers also got paid sometimes, so I could get something out of them. I felt happy then, even though I lived in terrible conditions: mold on the walls, old cockroaches, secondhand furniture, rusty wiring, meager food. But I had freedom. I ran around the yard all day long with the neighborhood kids like me. We had fun together, we laughed, invented interesting games, climbed trees. I loved my mum very much and thought she was the most beautiful in the world. She, of course, also loved me in her own way and took care of me. But very often Jen would cry after another failure in her personal life. And then she'd start blaming me for things a girl wouldn't understand. If I hadn't given birth to you then, I'd be married to a decent man by now, she said. And with this trailer, who needs me anyway? Jen said. Cassandra shrank back from these words. She felt very guilty. She just didn't know how to help her mother, how to fix the situation. Fortunately, these moments were rare and didn't last long. Jen was quickly becoming herself a cheerful and adventurous woman. Her mother sometimes dressed Cassandra up, gave her makeup, called her a pretty doll. The girl rejoiced. She was happy that she could please her mother in some way. When you grow up, you'll be a beauty. We'll marry you off to a rich man. And you and I won't have to worry, Jen said. Just don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't give up on the little things. Yeah, course I'll be there for you. I'll help you. I'll help you. I'll guide you. I'm wise now. Cassandra, who was 6 or 7 at the time, could not understand what her mother was saying, but she nodded and smiled, just to please her parent. And then Uncle Nicholas Jones came into her mother's life. Cassandra liked the man at first. He smiled at the girl, often bought her toys and sweets. He treated her mother very well, like a princess. Jen blossomed beside him, became even more beautiful, even more charming. And her eyes shone with a special light. She looked at Uncle Nicholas with such adoration, such hope. And he often hugged her and kissed her. Cassandra would later realize that Uncle Nicholas was just pretending to be kind. Uncle Nicholas and I have decided to get married, a happy Jen told her daughter one day. He proposed to me. Now Uncle Nicholas is going to be your daddy. We're going to live far away from here in a very nice house. You will have your own room, your own bed, a beautiful bed. Just like a princess, and lots of toys. It all sounded like some kind of fairy tale story. Cassandra could not even imagine this house, this garden, though her mother had described to her in color the place where they would soon live. Little Cassandra's life changed dramatically. It took Cassandra a long time to get used to the luxury around her. It was unbelievable. A room of her own with a bed under a pink canopy and shelves full of new toys. A pool in the garden where you could splash around as much as you wanted. Swings, merry-go-rounds and free access, obliging people in uniform, offering for breakfast, lunch and dinner mind-boggling dishes. All this made the girl dizzy with the abundance of impressions during the period of adaptation. Cassandra was so tired that at 8 o'clock in the evening she fell exhausted on her princess bed and fell asleep. However, Cassandra still lacked a few things. Firstly, it was not customary to walk outside the fence here, and she wanted to explore the neighborhood. But you can't, so you can't. Secondly, the girl missed her friends, the boys and girls Cassandra had grown up with. She missed them very much. One day she asked her mother if she could invite them here for a day. "Oh no," Jen said with a shrug. "I don't want that gypsy Tabor showing up here. Forget your street kids. Soon you'll have new friends, boys and girls from decent families." Mother had changed a lot. Outwardly, Jen had become so beautiful that she was a sight to behold. Now she spent a lot of time in beauty parlors and even worked out at the gym. Jen made friends with similarly beautiful and well-groomed women. They often met, sat in cafes, went shopping, and just walked around. Her mother looked happy and often said aloud that this was the life she deserved. Jen paid almost no attention to her daughter at that time. The woman tried to get home by the time Nicholas came home from work. And when he appeared, all Jen's attention was directed to her husband, which apparently he liked very much. Cassandra, on the other hand, didn't get much attention. Her mother was focused on Nicholas, on her new friends and hobbies, on anything but her own daughter. Jen literally reveled in her own life, forgetting about Cassandra. Cassandra was looked after by her nanny, a woman with a stern and slightly arrogant face. The girl was afraid of her, but she obeyed her without question. The nanny prepared the girl for school, taught her letters and numbers, made her write curlicues and circles in her copybooks. At first, the nanny was outraged by the child's pedagogical neglect. "Did you grow up with wolves in a pack?" she wondered. "Can't you know such elementary things at the age of 7? But Cassandra was making rapid progress, and the nanny soon changed her mind. "That girl will make a good girl," she said of her pupil. And then school began. Cassandra was sent to a prestigious gymnasium, which was not cheap. The children spent all day in the school, first lessons, then recreation, then extra classes. Cassandra quickly made friends with her classmates. At first they seemed strange to her, too quiet, too boring, not like her backyard friends, whom she still missed very much. Cassandra was surprised that these kids didn't know basic games: catch up, hide and seek with cans. She had taught them, of course. The girls' new acquaintances came to be absolutely delighted. From then on, Cassandra became something of a leader among the new acquaintances. She was the one who came up with fun activities and events that her friends always took up with joy and interest. But teachers and tutors often scolded Cassandra for her excessive initiative. It was much more profitable for them to deal with calm, obedient children. They offered board games and modeling between classes. But they had already got a taste of other entertainment. They were just children. One day during a game of dodgeball, which started in the school corridor, one boy accidentally smashed a glass cabinet with gymnasium awards with a ball. Shards flew everywhere, and one of them injured a girl. Not too serious, fortunately, but the blood in the infirmary stopped for a long time. There was a huge scandal. The parents of the injured pupil were outraged. How could it be that the administration of such an expensive, prestigious gymnasium could not ensure the safety of children? Cassandra was also hurt. The principal shouted at the little girl, whom the teacher almost by the ear brought to his office, accused her of having a bad influence on other children, called her promiscuous. And then, right in front of Cassandra, he called Nicholas and invited him in for a serious talk. Cassandra was sitting outside the office on the couch when Nicholas and Jen walked briskly to the principal's office. At first, the girl felt relieved they were family after all. She was scared and hurt. She didn't understand what she was guilty of and why she was being shouted at now. But her stepfather gave her stepdaughter such an icy stare that she was even more afraid. The mother did not look at her daughter at all. She looked pale, worried, guilty. Cassandra couldn't hear what the adults were saying to the principal. Both parents were silent all the way home. Her mother occasionally turned to her daughter and looked at her with a mixture of annoyance and disappointment. That look made the girl want to fall through the ground. And at home, Nicholas beat the girl. It was the first time, but it would not be the last. He whipped Cassandra, who tried to dodge, fiercely with the belt right on her legs and arms. It left red streaks on her skin, but that didn't stop the man. "You filthy, savage brat," Nicholas said. "I've had to listen to so much reproach because of you. Bad, spoiled genes, you bitch. Well, nothing, I'll teach you. Savages have no place in my house." It was painful, hurtful, scary. Nicholas held his victim tightly, and Cassandra could only twitch, unable to dodge the blows. Her eyes were dark with pain. And her mother? She stood by her side and didn't even try to stand up for her daughter. On the contrary, when it was over, she hugged Nicholas and began to comfort him. Not her battered child. Cassandra didn't go to school the next day because she had a fever. Then there was the weekend, during which the girl recovered. No one felt sorry for her, neither her mother nor Nicholas. They had little contact with Cassandra. That, too, was a punishment. On Monday, the girl was sent to grammar school for the first time wearing trousers and a long-sleeved blouse to hide the marks of the beating. It was that very first time Cassandra realized that her stepfather hated her. And her mother? Her mother loves her, of course, it's her mom. But Jen is much more attached to the affluent life her husband provides for her, which means she'll always be on Nicholas's side. Nicholas no longer tried to hide his dislike for his stepdaughter. He had the tacit approval of his wife, for whom he still seemed to have strong feelings. And now Cassandra was often the whipping girl. The occasion could be anything: a bad grade, a teacher's remark, a broken plate, an unkempt appearance. Sometimes Nicholas didn't even need a reason. Sometimes he'd come home upset, and then he'd see the hated Cassandra, and it would start. "He must be crazy," the girl said, staring directly into the camera lens. "I think so. You see, he enjoys hitting me." His eyes start to shine with joy. "It's so scary. I'm afraid that one day he'll cross the line and break me." The mother has seen it all and never, not once, even tried to protect her daughter. Sometimes after another beating, Jen would comfort Cassandra. "He means well for you. He's afraid you'll act like a naughty girl. It's just parenting. All loving parents raise their children to be good. You should be glad Nicholas is so caring." But for some reason, Cassandra couldn't be happy. But for a while, she really believed that all this was normal. She'd never had a father before. Maybe that's just how fathers raise their children. Perhaps every one of her classmates was experiencing the same thing. Nicholas tried to hit Cassandra without leaving marks, or leave them in inconspicuous places. When did that fail? Cassandra walked to school in long-sleeved clothes and trousers, hiding the beatings. "No one must know what happened yesterday," Jen told her, "or they'll know what a naughty girl you are because Daddy punished you." And Cassandra believed her mother. She was ashamed of her scars and bruises and hid them from others. But one day, when the marks of the last punishment had not yet worn off, there was a medical examination in the gymnasium. Cassandra was so embarrassed about her bruises. Now everyone would see how naughty she was. The young doctor was horrified by the marks on the little girl's body. "What's the matter with you?" he asked Cassandra. "Where did it come from?" "I fell down the stairs," she mumbled. It was the first thing that came to her mind. It would be better not to tell these people the truth, so that no one would realize how naughty she was. "She's a hyperactive child," confirmed the teacher in the room. "Something is going on with her all the time." Did the teachers know what was happening to me? Cassandra spoke slowly and clearly so that every word would reach those who would watch the video. I'd like to think they didn't. Because if they knew and kept quiet, because of Nicholas's money and connections, then I'm just horrified at the cruelty of this world. At these words, the girl smiled at the camera. The woman, who was in shock at the story of this child, found the strength to smile back. And Cassandra was growing up. Nicholas was still taking out his anger on his stepdaughter. Jen still acquiesced to it. Up to a certain age, the girl had thought this was the norm. But then, as she grew older, she began to realize what was wrong. Communication with classmates, films, books, Cassandra absorbed information, becoming wiser and more experienced. And one day she realized that everything that was happening to her was a crime and could not be tolerated. "I went to the director and wrote a statement right in his office," the girl said. "I told them everything, even showed them my bruises and abrasions," Cassandra said. "They said they would look into it. I was so hopeful, I thought the nightmare was over. But it got worse." The headmaster turned to Nicholas, and he made it sound like Cassandra wasn't quite normal. Said they'd already made an appointment for her to see a psychiatrist. The headmaster believed it. Cassandra really did start being dragged round to the doctors. What kind of doctors were they? The girl assumed Nicholas had paid them. That's how a perfectly healthy child got a diagnosis on her chart. "Now everything I said was just nonsense," Cassandra said. "He had total power over me. I became his official whipping girl." Cassandra took a deep breath and continued the story. "I was taken out of school and homeschooled for good measure. I was now studying with teachers in an online format. What now? There's no one to complain about the person who raises you, feeds you, clothes you," Nicholas gloatingly questioned, looking at his stepdaughter. This was not at all the effect the girl had expected from her statement. She was now a prisoner, and in this beautiful house, even the minimal freedom she had left was taken away from her. Cassandra was deprived of communication with anyone except her mother, servants, and stepfather. She was labeled abnormal in the eyes of others. And the cherry on the cake, the girl's internet was cut off. Now she couldn't even communicate on social media. Total isolation. "It's really crazy," Cassandra said. But Nicholas and Jen made it seem like they were perfect parents. They took Cassandra on trips, sometimes taking her to cafes and restaurants. In general, they appeared with the girl in public to avoid suspicion. The beatings continued. Nicholas took all his anger out on his stepdaughter. Each time he went further and further and further. He never touched her face, because it was almost impossible to hide the beatings on her face. Jen kept silent, not only out of a desire to please her husband, but also out of fear. All the beatings and abuse went to her daughter. Who knows, maybe if it hadn't been for this lightning rod, she would have had to pay for her nice, fat life. "I left messages wherever I could," Cassandra said in a shaky voice. "I had spoken calmly before, but now my voice trembled. I tried to call for help, but it was no use. They thought I was crazy. One day Nicholas saw me trying to tell a woman on the street. It wasn't here. We were on holiday in Egypt at the time. He came over, showed the lady a diagnosis certificate, and then beat me so badly I passed out. I spent the rest of the holiday in bed in my room. They'd lock me up and go to the beach, and I thought I was going to die. I even wanted to. But no. I survived. I came round. Baby, how much have you been through? Linda couldn't help herself. He's getting angrier and angrier. I think he's losing his mind. Soon Nicholas will kill me and then make it look like an accident. He's got enough money and connections to do that. I'm scared. I'm very scared. I want to live, but there's no escape. And if I do, they'll bring me back. I mean, we have a happy family and everything for the baby. There's no help. This is my last chance to make a name for myself. Help me. Linda stopped the tape. She looked at the girl with pity and tenderness, and wanted so much to hug this poor child, so much to take her out of this terrible place right now. I'll do anything to get you out of here, the woman promised. And then a hunch suddenly struck her. Cassandra, baby, let us take pictures of your bruises and scars. Show them to me. Cassandra nodded briefly. She quickly rolled up the sleeves of her jumper and rolled up her trousers, and to the amazed Linda's eyes, a terrible picture appeared. Bruises, cuts, abrasions. The girl's entire body, hidden beneath her clothes, was covered with wounds and scars of varying age. Cassandra pulled up her jumper. Her stomach was a solid bruise with yellowing edges. The girl pulled back the neck, a red furrow showing on her thin neck. Linda gasped. Her hands were shaking, but she'd filmed the whole thing. It was frightening to imagine the nightmare the girl was living in. I'm going to the police. I'm going to the station right now, the woman promised the little girl. Thank you, she smiled. You're the first person to believe me. I just wish the police hadn't blamed it on my diagnosis. Nicholas once told the maid who happened to see my cuts on my hands that I was self-mutilating because of my illness. This is a man who has children. He'd believe it. He's got kids himself. He'll understand. It was scary leaving Cassandra alone in the mansion, but how else could she help her? Just get that video evidence to the station as soon as possible. Will reviewed the video several times. His face expressed a variety of emotions: bewilderment, surprise, then anger. What a bastard, the man exclaimed in anger. Linda, you go now. I need to assemble a group, the guardianship authorities, medics. Don't worry, I'll keep you informed. You're going down there right now? No, it's not that quick, but we're going to get the girl out, and soon. She's in a lot of danger. Linda went home. There, next to her favorite cats, she finally let her feelings out. Linda sobbed. She was shivering violently. She was afraid for Cassandra. She didn't understand, truly didn't understand the girl's mother. How could she bear to see her child treated like that? This Jen had been given such a treasure, a beautiful, intelligent daughter, and she did not appreciate the gift of fate and behaved like that. Cassandra ended up fine. Will told me later how the events unfolded. He stopped by Linda's house himself to bring her up to speed. It was so strange to see him back in that flat. Cassandra had just been taken to hospital at first. Nicholas claimed that his daughter had self-inflicted these injuries because of her diagnosis. He again tried to paint his stepdaughter as incompetent. The child welfare officials and the police did not argue with him. They only said that the girl should be examined but also placed temporarily elsewhere. Since the parents could not cope with a sick child, they promised that as soon as the child's condition stabilized, she would be returned to the family. Nicholas was worried, tried to threaten, offered money. He realized how it would all end. The man knew perfectly well that his stepdaughter is absolutely normal, mentally healthy child. This fact was quickly confirmed at the hospital. Cassandra had no psychiatric diagnosis whatsoever. The medical professionals who made it have yet to be dealt with. Examination of the wounds on the teenager's body showed that the girl could not have physically inflicted such injuries on herself. So someone else did it. Who? Considering Cassandra had been inside the walls of the house the whole time. The answer was self-evident. The victim gave a statement. She detailed how and when she received her bruises, cuts, and abrasions. Nicholas was immediately taken into custody. The police were very keen to prosecute the mother. She was, in fact, an accessory to the crime. But Jen managed to get away with it. The woman assured that she lived in mortal fear of her husband, that she was afraid of making things worse, so she kept quiet. That may have been partly true. Jen was just a witness in the case. but the child welfare authorities did initiate a termination of parental rights. Cassandra was in danger with this woman. The mother never once complained about her spouse's actions, never once stood up for her daughter, reason enough. Cassandra was placed in an orphanage. Linda visited the girl often. She seemed happy and content with her life. "It's nice here, it's peaceful," she said. "I can study, I can socialize with the boys, I can walk in the yard. They take us on excursions. And the most important thing is that I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be afraid that Nicholas, who came back late at night, angry and upset, will drag me out of bed with something and beat me up. It's such a blessing." Linda could hardly hold back her tears at the time. What kind of life did the girl have if the orphanage was her happiness? They socialized very well and soon became friends. Cassandra was an amazingly bright and cheerful person, despite the fact that she had been through so many trials. Linda sincerely wanted to help her forget all this horror and give her a happy childhood. Cassandra needed warmth and attention. The orphanage is good, but there are so many children here. The carers simply do not have enough time to listen and support each one. Will was the first to know about Linda's decision. The woman called him to find out how to proceed. "You know, I'm not surprised," said the ex-husband. "I knew you'd come to this sooner or later, and I'm very happy for the girl." "So you're going to help me do it?" Linda asked. "Because I don't know where to start." "I'll help you with the adoption we promised. I know some people who get it done quickly, as long as the police agree. But I don't think that will be a problem either." "No problem?" Linda said confidently. The first morning in September was fresh but sunny. For the first time in a long time, this date meant something to Linda. She was seeing her daughter off to 7th grade. Yes, her daughter. Cassandra was now 13 and had grown a lot over the summer. Her old uniform was getting too small. Together they picked out new clothes for the girl to wear to school. They spent a long time shopping, looking for clothes that would fit Cassandra perfectly. It was not an easy task. Linda got a teenager at once, bypassing the stage of cute baby dresses and bonnets. Cassandra was very tall and very thin. Apparently it's hard to find anything to fit these kids. But that's okay, Linda and Cassandra made it work. "Cassandra, get up, we're late for the line," Linda exclaimed, glancing at her watch. The aroma of fresh toast and coffee wafted from the kitchen. "It's time for breakfast." "Good morning," the girl smiled as she emerged from the bedroom. She was so cute, with disheveled hair. There were no more bruises and abrasions on her arms and legs. Only the scars from particularly deep cuts were reminders of the nightmare of the past. There weren't many of them left all over his body. But nothing. Time would heal everything, smooth everything out. Cassandra walked over to Linda and hugged her. She always did that. The girl missed hugs and warmth. Linda just really wanted someone to care for, someone to look after. The perfect combination for both of them. The younger one got a loving, caring mother. The older one got a grateful, beautiful daughter. Jen had tried to reconnect with Cassandra, calling her, even coming to the school gates. But the girl wasn't ready for that yet. The very sight of Jen was bringing Cassandra back to the hell she had lived in for so many years. Resentment towards her mother, misunderstanding, anger. Cassandra still hadn't forgiven her parent. But psychologists worked with the girl. At first, Linda took her adopted daughter to sessions every day. Now the visits were reduced to once a week. Cassandra's psychological trauma was being worked through. The injury to her soul was even more serious than the injury to her body. The outcome was to be Jen's forgiveness of her daughter. It was necessary for Cassandra herself. It would make it easier for the girl to move on. There was still a lot of work to be done, but together they would get through it. There are two of them, and that's strength. The poor family used their last pennies to feed and shelter the little stray. And when the janitor saw, "Is there going to be anything to eat in this house today, or what?" the head of the family asked loudly and indignantly. "Alex, darling, but we just had dinner." Kate looked at her husband in surprise, who was sitting in front of an empty plate, holding a spoon in his hand, and looked at her expectantly. She had fed the whole family a modest dinner, and she didn't understand exactly what was required of her. The children had long since eaten and gone to their rooms to do their own things. "So it was dinner?" Alex asked ironically. and I thought that a man should have at least some meat. You can be satisfied with cabbage leaves for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm actually working, bringing money into the family. I thought I was entitled to a decent meal for that money. Kate bit her lip. She realized, belatedly, that the old story was starting again. The same old story that repeated itself every time the month came to an end. Each time her husband approached this conversation in a different way than the previous one. That was why the woman didn't immediately realize what he meant. She sighed heavily. She didn't want to start this useless argument again, which would only lead to another quarrel and nothing more. She had heard all of Alex's arguments many times before. And many times she had answered them with her own. But the couple had never been able to come to an agreement. Nothing new. Kate was sure of it. Neither of them had ever come up with one, which meant that continuing this conversation would be just as pointless as before. Nevertheless, she knew her husband was waiting for her answer, and keeping silent wasn't an option either. She had tried this tactic 2 or 3 times before, and the result had not pleased her at all. Kate began gently. We've already discussed this many times. Is it worth it again? This argument is worth it, her husband interrupted her firmly. We're going to have this conversation until the situation changes. Or rather, until you get a job, Alex said. I can't support all of you forever. Kate splayed her hands. Honey, but how can I go to work? They don't take the younger ones at daycare. There's no places anywhere. We wouldn't have enough for a nanny even if I got a job. But others manage without nannies. They have grandparents, brothers, sisters, but we have no one. I'm an orphan and your parents don't want to babysit so I can get a part-time job. And don't blame it on my parents again. They raised their own kids and they don't have to take care of yours. Kate froze in place, even as she stopped washing the dishes. The word alone hurt her as if her husband had hit her. A physical blow would have been less painful. What do you mean? With mine, she exclaimed. They are our children, Alex. You wanted them as much as I did. Alex smirked. I did, but I changed my mind. We didn't agree that I was going to carry the whole bunch. I thought you'd be on maternity leave, and then, like normal people, you'd go to work. And since you're a housewife, the kids are your responsibility. I had nothing to do with them. Kate felt as if someone had squeezed her throat. Alex never said anything like that. Yes, he'd complained that he was single-handedly feeding his family on his small salary. Yes, lamented that his wife couldn't provide him with what he thought he needed. But never claimed that their shared children had nothing to do with him. As if reading her thoughts and seeing her condition perfectly, Alex seemed to have decided to finally finish his wife off. And as for those youngest ones, which you so justify your laziness with, I'm not sure that they are from me at all. I worked all day while you were on maternity leave. There's no telling who might have visited you. Kate couldn't bear to hear such unfair accusations, choking back tears. She rushed out of the kitchen and, without realizing how, found herself in the nursery. 6-year-old Sam was looking after his younger brother and sister. He looked up at her in surprise. "Mummy?" he asked in a tone that was unusually serious for his age. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, son. It's all right." Kate belatedly realized her mistake and tried to wipe away her tears discreetly. The boy looked at her attentively, and then shifted his gaze to the younger children and nodded slowly. Obviously, he thought that his mum didn't want to disturb the babies, so he tried to pretend that everything was all right. Kate didn't bother to dissuade him and just quietly left the room, closing the door behind her. She hoped that the next day Sam would have more important things to do and would not remember the incident. The woman had no idea where to put her grief. There were only 2 rooms in the flat, the children's room and the adult room. And in the second one, her husband could come at any moment. Kate didn't want to see him now. Besides, she suspected that he would not give up so easily and would continue to annoy her with his remarks. There was only one way out, despite the late hour, to leave the flat. Of course, it was undesirable to leave the children virtually alone. On the other hand, in such a state, she would not be able to interact with them normally. And so, whether there is an adult in the flat or not does not matter much. The younger ones would still be in Sam's care. At least Kate had no doubt that he'd put them to bed properly, and he'd go to bed on time too. Her son, responsible beyond his years, loved to play with his brother and sister. Of course, the woman tried not to let the children be left alone for long periods of time. But when Sam took to tutoring the younger ones in her presence, she could see that he was doing a fine job. Yes, she was lucky to have a son, and that was the only consolation she had at the moment. She wandered aimlessly down the street, hardly looking around, not even noticing the small and nasty rain that had started. All her thoughts were focused on one single question: how she had come to such a life, how her happy youthful love had ended with her husband openly accusing her of infidelity without any reason. Kate recalled how they met. She is a young economics student at one of the country's leading universities. He was a promising young entrepreneur. Together they seemed to others, and to themselves, just a perfect couple. Their relationship developed like in some romantic fairy tale. Courtship, gifts, restaurants. Huge, gorgeous bouquets of flowers. They both had big futures ahead of them, and hardly anyone could have imagined the poverty and doom in which these people now found themselves. And this fall began, perhaps, at the very moment when Alex began to persistently persuade his future wife to leave the institute. "Why would you do that?" he questioned. "My income is enough for 2 people. You will stay at home, cook, clean, bring up the children, after all." At first, Kate flatly refused to even hear about it. Raised in an orphanage, who had all chances to be at the bottom of life, she, by incredible diligence, and by some miracle managed to get into decent society and now held onto this opportunity with all her might. In the end, however, Alex managed to persuade her that this wonderful new world was not going to get away from her anyway, and at first everything was really good. Kate, as Alex had planned, was doing everyday life in their common house while he was doing his business. They had enough money, even with a surplus. Nevertheless, somehow it didn't work out. There were always some unnecessary but pleasant things that they wanted to buy right now, and perhaps none of them thought that any savings were necessary at that time. "My parents will help us in case of anything," Alex assured his young wife when she timidly started a conversation on the subject. "You know they're not." Poor Kate still didn't know if he believed what he was saying, or if he was deceiving her. Surely that very critical situation would never happen. Anyway, after a while something happened to his business. Kate, without going into details, admitted only that over time it began to give less and less profit, until finally it collapsed completely. And at that moment it turned out that Alex's parents were not going to help the young family. "Except for you," his father told him. "We have younger children who are not yet on their feet. And you are a grown man, and you have to deal with your problems on your own." Then they had to sell the big, fancy flat they lived in and move to a small 2-room flat on the outskirts of the city. Strangely enough, Alex himself was the most dissatisfied with this state of affairs. Apparently it was the fact that he had spent his whole life in luxury, and now he was forced to live a rather miserable existence. Kate took it with philosophical calmness. She, of course, was also accustomed to a poor life, but she had once led it, and therefore was more prepared for hardship and knew what to do in such circumstances. Quite quickly she found a job. She got a job as a saleswoman in a shop. The salary, of course, was modest, but it was better than nothing. She didn't see any other options for herself. Alex chose a completely different way of solving problems. He went on a long-term binge. Kate didn't blame her husband for anything. Everything happens in life. On the contrary, as a decent wife, she tried to inspire him, calm him down, and support him. And in the end, her endeavors succeeded. Alex stopped drinking and started to develop new business ideas that would allow their family to return to its former wealth and prosperity. However, these ideas always failed. Even if he managed to save the initial sum and start a new business, quite quickly there were all sorts of difficulties that brought Alex's efforts to naught. And the longer it went on, the more unbearable his character became. "I don't have enough money to fully realize my projects," he told Kate frankly. "But what can I do, darling?" she replied. "I'm already taking all the extra shifts I can. I'm working almost no weekends. I just don't have anywhere else to take the time to earn more," Kate said. "Of course, if I'd finished university, it would have been a lot easier. But what's to be sorry about now? This situation should be a lesson to both of us. I need to finish my studies and get a proper job. Besides, like I said, I'll need to save up. But of course, those are plans for when we get out of this." How would we get out of it? Her husband Alex resented. "Well, so that there's more money?" "Maybe," Kate said, stammering shyly, "you could find yourself some part-time work, at least for the weekend." "I don't have time for that," Alex said categorically. In case you haven't noticed, while you're working for pennies, I'm trying to rebuild the business and bring us back to our former position. And you're not helping me at all." "But I'm really doing the best I can," Kate replied with surprise. No, her husband objected with obvious irritation in his voice. "Not everything. There's something you haven't done. Though I've explained to you repeatedly how important it is to me and to you." "Honey, you seem to forget that even though I didn't get a full education, I studied economics for 2 years. What you're suggesting is absolutely insane. Maybe you'll finally start trusting me on things I do know something about." "You just don't believe in me?" Alex answered in a frustrated voice. "You think that once I made a mistake once, I'll repeat them all the time, and I'll never succeed again." After such statements, Kate, of course, immediately rushed to convince her husband that he was deeply mistaken, and no one believes in him as much as she does. Eventually, this conversation would end with nothing, only to begin again the next day. However, no matter how hard Alex tried, there was no way Kate could agree to his plan. And he proposed a very simple thing: to take a large loan in her name, to let this money into business for him, bankrupt and officially unemployed. No bank was willing to lend. So he could not realize his idea without his wife's help. Kate urged him to think about how they would pay back the loan in case of another failure. She was absolutely sure that it was not the way to restore the former status, but to an even deeper hole. And luckily for her, she never gave in to any entreaties from her husband. And then she got pregnant with Sam, and Alex had to leave all his business ideas behind and get a job to be able to feed his family, which was soon to be even bigger. Of course, he wasn't thrilled at the prospect. Both spouses were still convinced that this situation was temporary. Kate did not plan to sit on maternity leave for a long time and was going to go to work as soon as she arranged Sam in the nursery. But even this plan was not destined to come true. There were no places in kindergartens. And soon enough, Kate realized that the nursery was nothing to dream of. Well, if the queue will come up in 3 or 4 years. And then it happened that she got pregnant again. Just when Sam was 3 and she'd already had 2 children. That's when Alex started talking about going back to work. She realized it herself. But how could she do that with 3 small children in her arms? As time went on, her husband became more and more insistent, and the situation didn't change, which eventually led to the ugly conflict that happened that unfortunate evening. That was what Kate was thinking about as she wandered aimlessly in the darkness of the night through the streets of the neighborhood that had become almost dear to her for so many years. Fortunately, although it was on the outskirts of the city, it was considered quite prosperous. Crime was rare here, so it was safe to travel even at this late hour. However, that was the last thing on the woman's mind. Suddenly, a strange thing caught her attention. Kate, immersed in her own unhappy thoughts and memories, did not immediately realize what had alarmed her. Just somewhere in her subconsciousness, it was as if a neon sign flashed, informing her that something in the space around her was wrong. Snapping out of her own musings, the woman looked around and quite quickly discovered the cause of her vague unease. It was a little girl the same age as her Sam. In her smart pink dress, she was sitting on the curb all by herself, staring at the pavement beneath her feet. Kate raised her eyebrows in surprise. She'd never met any street kids in her neighborhood. Not beggars. Beggars, or just wandering the streets, especially at a time like this. Still, there were decent enough people living here to let kids out alone at night. Not rich enough for beggars to be interested in the neighborhood. Besides, the girl didn't look like a street kid, or even just a child from a dysfunctional family. She wore beautiful and clean, obviously new clothes, and she did not behave like a little tramp. The whole situation surprised Kate very much. But this surprise was unimportant, as if it were background. With her mind, she realized all these details much later, when once again she replayed this strange meeting in her head. Now she was only interested in one thing: the child was out at night, so she was in potential danger. It was necessary to give this girl all possible help. With this in mind, she approached the child carefully, so as not to frighten her, and squatted down in front of her so that their faces were at the same level. "Hello," she said quietly and affably. "What is your name?" "I don't know," the girl answered surprisingly calmly. "What is it?" Kate was surprised. "It's like this. I mean, I probably knew it once, but I forgot it." "And who are your parents, and where are they?" "I don't know. I mean, "I don't remember," she said. "Do you remember anything at all?" Kate asked cautiously. This time the girl did not say anything and just shook her head silently. The woman, however, was not satisfied with this answer. "But how did you get here?" "I came," she answered. "From where?" From there, the child waved her hand indifferently, showing the direction. "What was there? Was it a forest or a park?" "I don't know. I woke up there and didn't remember anything. I just went somewhere, and now I was tired, so I decided to sit." Kate shook her head, perplexed. She didn't like the situation, and she had no idea what she should do about it. Finally, after some silence and thought, she asked, "Are you hungry?" The girl nodded vigorously, signaling that she hadn't eaten in a long time. "All right," Kate sighed tiredly. "Come with me, I'll feed you and you'll sleep in our flat with my children. And in the morning we'll think about what to do with you. And for convenience, I'll call you Mary for now. Do you mind?" "No," answered the new Mary very indifferently. Taking the girl's hand firmly in hers, Kate went home. All her own troubles and sorrows immediately went out of her mind. That was just the way she was. If someone needed help, her own problems were pushed to the back of her mind. Especially for her, as a mother, she couldn't bear the situation with a neglected child who couldn't even remember his own name. When they reached the flat without any incident, it was already about 2. All of Kate's housemates, as she was immediately convinced, were sleeping peacefully in their beds. The woman was even pricked by a vague resentment. None of them seemed to care where she was at such a late hour. On the other hand, this state of affairs could not please her. Kate had no desire to explain to the children and her husband, especially her husband, where the girl had come from and why she was in their flat. She quietly went to the kitchen, took out the remains of a modest dinner from the fridge and fed the little waif. Once she was full, the girl began to yawn desperately. It was clear that Mia had not only not eaten for a long time, but had not slept for a long time. Kate decided to make up a bed for her on the couch, but she settled down on the floor and, exhausted from the day's work, fell asleep quickly, forgetting to set her alarm clock. As a rule, she got up before anyone else in the house. After all, she had to make breakfast, get her husband ready for work, and her eldest son off to school. Besides, she was the only one in the family who was a lark, and early rising was not only habitual but pleasant for her. But of course, this did not apply when she had to go to bed late. In such circumstances, it was extremely difficult to wake up without an alarm clock. Naturally, Kate overslept, and her awakening was not the most pleasant, as she woke up to someone shaking her roughly by the shoulder. When she opened her eyes, she saw Alex's angry face right in front of her. "I'm late for work," he exclaimed, noticing that his wife had opened her eyes. "Breakfast isn't ready. Are you still asleep?" "Not in bed, but on the kitchen floor." "And explain to me, please, who is that girl snoring on the sofa?" For the first few moments, Kate didn't even realize which girl he was talking about. Then she remembered her night's adventures and tried to explain to Alex what was going on. He listened with a skeptical expression on his face. Then he said that when he got home from work, Mia wouldn't be in their house. Without breakfast, he left for work, leaving Kate to recover. However, even this luxury was beyond her reach. In just a few minutes, the woman realized that her husband probably hadn't bothered to just wake Sam up, let alone getting him ready for school. And sure enough, the baby was sleeping peacefully in his cot. And if Alex was already late for work, it was time for Sam to leave the house. For the first time that morning, Kate looked at the clock and clutched her head. Her son's first class was due to start in 10 minutes. She woke Sam up, made him a quick breakfast, and sent him off to class. It wasn't a long walk to school, and the boy could manage on his own. Nevertheless, Kate realized that he was going to be late anyway, which meant that he, and therefore she, would soon be in trouble. However, Kate wasn't going to think about that right now, as she had other difficulties that required immediate action. Fortunately, all the commotion that had been going on in the house for the previous half an hour had not disturbed Mia's sound sleep. Her savior decided to wait until the girl woke up on her own. In the meantime, she would take care of her own small children and think about what she should do. It took 2 hours for the girl to get up. And by that time, Kate had already developed a clear plan of action. It was time for a walk with the kids, and she decided, taking Mia with her, to look at the nearest police station. After all, that was what law enforcement was for, to deal with cases like this. "So you found this girl on the street last night?" The officer on duty at the station asked her. "That's right. And she can't even remember her name," Kate confirmed again. "That's right." She didn't understand the point of this procedure. The woman had already told the whole story once, and then told it again in a written statement. And now, reading her statement, the police officer for some reason again reiterated literally all the circumstances that she had already repeatedly disclosed. "Why didn't you go to the police immediately?" he asks. "You see, I was very tired, and it just didn't occur to me that it was necessary to do exactly that," Kate sighed. "The important thing is that you did it now," the duty officer replied. Mia didn't seem to realize it was about her. Or she did, but she didn't think much of it. Instead, she was looking at the room they were in with interest. Though, to Kate's mind, there was nothing fascinating or even simply beautiful about it. Nor could there be. "And what do you plan to do with the child?" the policeman asked after a moment's silence. "What do you mean?" Kate was surprised. The question had shocked her before it was asked. The woman sincerely believed that now the girl's fate was the responsibility of law enforcement officers. "Directly," answered the duty officer indifferently. "We can put her in a special institution, or let her stay with you for the time being." Kate's eyes darkened. The choice she was being offered was impossible. On the one hand, her husband had made it quite clear that she would not be here by this evening, and she realized that they couldn't afford another child. She could barely manage with her own. It was all understandable and logical. But the other side of the coin was in the word special institution, orphanage. It was unthinkable to let this girl go there. Kate remembered very well, despite the years that had passed, how difficult it had been for her to live and grow up in the orphanage, how she had to endure the bullying of other children and the cruel punishments of the carers. For her, it was all in the past. She had endured and overcome everything. But she was born into a dysfunctional family and lost even the parents she had. She was used to hardship since she was a child. For her, this kind of treatment was the order of the day. Mia, on the other hand, was a completely different matter. It was immediately clear that she was a homely, loved, maybe even a little spoiled child, and also with an obvious mental trauma, since she did not remember her past, or even her real name. It was absolutely obvious to Kate that this girl simply would not survive in the harsh conditions of the orphanage. Of course, at that moment, the woman didn't have time to think long and hard. But it was undoubtedly her reflection that motivated her decision. Looking into the eyes of the duty officer, she answered firmly, "The girl will stay with us." "That's fine," the policeman replied. He had obviously expected such an answer, and when he received it, he suddenly opened up. "I'm from an orphanage myself, and I can see that this girl doesn't belong in such an institution." "That's what I thought," Kate said coldly. As a matter of fact, he went on, not noticing her tone, "It's not exactly in the rules to leave her with you, but I'll try to sort it out." "All right," the woman said. "Can we go now?" "Yes, of course. If anything comes to light about the little girl's relatives, we'll call you. But to tell you the truth, I'd advise you to start your own search. You know, sometimes the internet can do more than the police." When Kate finally got home, she found a distraught Sam there. He had already returned from school and grimaced as he showed his mother his diary, which contained a note about his lateness and the fact that the class teacher had called her in. "I'm sorry, Mum," the son said guiltily. "I should have got up myself in the morning." "No, you didn't," Kate replied. "You know it's my job to wake everyone up in the morning. Not because it's my job or anything like that, but because that's what we agreed. So I'm the one who should be apologizing to you." From their conversation, it would appear that no other girl was present in the flat. Sam, though he looked at her with some bewilderment, tactfully didn't ask any questions. Once again, Kate thought about how lucky she was to have a son who, unlike many, even the twins, had been a perfectly calm child in early childhood. Leaving the younger children in the care of the older ones, Kate set about preparing dinner. Then everyone sat down at the table. To the woman's surprise, Sam and Mia had somehow managed to become friends and were chatting animatedly about something of their own. It wasn't until after the meal, when the girl wasn't around, that her son approached her with an obvious question. "Mum, is Mia going to live with us now?" I asked her, but she doesn't know. "For now, yes," son Kate replied. "The girl is lost and she needs help. If we don't take her in, she'll go to an orphanage." "It's a good thing she's staying," Sam concluded abruptly. "Why?" Mum wondered. "The younger ones, like her Sam, told her seriously. So it'll be easier for you and me now." Kate laughed softly, ruffled his hair, and went about her usual chores: laundry, cleaning, preparing dinner for her husband. She preferred not to think about what would happen when he returned from work. However, the scandal exceeded all her expectations. "What is this?" he almost shouted, coming into the kitchen. "Are you not enough of your own? Some other girl picked up?" "She's not a girl." Kate stood up for the girl. "And anyway, it's only temporary until her parents are found. We can't let her end up in an orphanage. Look at her. She's a totally homeschooled kid. There's nothing for her there. There's an institution for people like her. She has nothing to do here," he interrupted. "Have you thought about our charity? How are we going to feed her, clothe her, and all the other costs of supporting a child? What do you know about child-related expenses?" Kate suddenly flared up, even to herself. "Have you ever bought anything for them? Do you have any idea what a child's needs are?" She didn't know what had prompted her to start this accusatory speech. Perhaps it was just a resentment that had built up in her soul over the years, and now she needed to vent it somewhere. Her husband listened to her angry confession unusually quietly, without interrupting or objecting. He must not have expected such pressure from his wife, usually affectionate, calm, even in conflict situations. And Kate kept talking and talking, expressing everything that had accumulated in her soul. And about the fact that the money that he earns, categorically not enough to live. And that it could have been avoided if he had got a job at once, instead of sitting on her dependence for several years. She even reminded him of the various excesses he allowed himself after the birth of their children, while she herself had to count the pennies he gave her to feed and clothe the whole family. She spoke, of course, not only about money, but also about how their relationship had deteriorated, how she missed the former love and romance. Not only and not so much flowers and gifts. Of course not. She'd like some simple human attention, and at least a little warmth and involvement instead of constant unfair reproaches. "Well," Alex said in a completely calm tone when Kate finally finished her monologue, "I understand that all of you will be much better without me than with me." This ominous phrase hung in the air, and the man, without saying another word, took out a large suitcase from the wardrobe in the room and began to pack his belongings into it. Kate, it would seem, should have, seeing this, started crying, apologizing, telling her husband how much she loved him, urging him not to make hasty decisions. And only 2 days ago she would have done so, but now she looked at what was happening with a coldness that killed her. Alex was getting ready at an emphasized leisurely pace and occasionally glanced at Kate. Obviously, he expected the usual reaction from her too, and most likely he wanted to scare the woman more than actually going to leave. If so, his plan hadn't worked. And once the suitcase was fully packed, there was nowhere to retreat to. "To hell with you." He threw angrily at his wife and slammed the front door behind him. Kate stood in the middle of the kitchen for a few more minutes, then waved goodbye and went into the nursery. There, Mia and Sam did their best to calm the younger children, obviously frightened by the ugly scene in the kitchen. The older ones were as pale as chalk, but, feeling responsible, tried not to panic. The woman hugged all 4 of them tightly. "Is Daddy not coming back?" Sam finally asked. Kate noted that there was not an ounce of regret or joy in his voice. He didn't really care whether Dad came back or not. He was just clarifying information. This man, who rarely came home, even on weekends, was almost a stranger to the children. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "Maybe he'll come back in a while." So the 5 of them, the 4 children, and Kate herself began to live together. And if at first she feared that, without her husband's help, she would not be able to cope with such a crowd of hungry mouths, she soon discovered that this was not the case. On the contrary, without constant scandals and ridiculous demands, to live much easier and calmer. This despite the fact that there was no money for household expenses. Alex allocated a very tiny amount from his salary, while Kate paid the bulk of them from her maternity and child allowances. However, there was a deadline when the money was going to run out, and that was a bit of a problem. Kate realized there was no way she could go full-time with 4 young children. But suddenly, with Alex gone, she had the energy and time to slowly start looking for part-time options. And here she was, helped by several happy accidents at once. First, she received a call from the headmistress of the kindergarten, where her children were waiting in line for admission, without saying anything specific over the phone. She urged Kate to come to the institution as soon as possible for a personal conversation. "Hello," the headmistress said when she met her. "I understand that you have been waiting for a long time for your children to be able to enter our kindergarten." "So long that one of them has already gone to school," Kate said, a little irritated. "I'll tell you a secret," the headmistress said. "By the time you get your turn, the younger ones will have already gone to school. A lot of people don't have a garden. Unfortunately, we have far more children than places." "Don't look at me like that. I didn't invent it, and it's not in my power to change it." "So, you called me here just to tell me we don't stand a chance?" "On the contrary, I called you here to suggest a solution to this problem. You see, we had another nanny leave the nursery some time ago. Nobody stays long, you know, and we can't find a new one. The rest of the staff are scrambling and about to leave. So I thought I should offer this vacancy to someone who has been waiting in line for a long time. I'll be honest, it's a lot of work and not much pay. But we can get your kids into an age-appropriate group right away." "And why are you offering it to me?" Kate asked suspiciously. "I don't even have a teaching degree. Surely there are more suitable candidates." "But you have 3 children of your own. Believe me, in the work that you have to do, it is much more important. However, I won't hide it. We also made such an offer to more suitable candidates, as you put it. But none of them accepted it. So we made a list of those who might be interested in such a deal, and you are not the first person I called about it. Does that answer satisfy you?" Kate was satisfied. Now she had some work to do, which could be combined with taking care of the younger children. The older ones were already independent enough to spend a few hours in the flat without her and cook their own lunch, especially since the kindergarten was not far from both their school and home. Of course, they didn't live too well, but not worse than before Alex left. Life was starting to get better. And after a while, a second good thing happened. This time, Kate was called in by the same police officer on duty who had taken her statement about finding Mia in the street a few weeks ago. "Any news about her parents?" Kate asked hopefully. "Alas, no news," the policeman replied. "Like I told you, we're not very good at this sort of thing, especially since the data set on her is minimal. Didn't you try looking for her yourself?" "I didn't have time for that," the woman shrugged her shoulders. "I have 3 of my own besides her, you know. And my husband left recently." "So it's understandable," the policeman sighed. "But in fact, I called you for a very specific reason. You see, I finally managed to formalize Mia's stay with you. That means you can put her in school and everything." "That's great," Kate glowed. The fact that Mia couldn't go to school really bothered the woman a lot. So far, she had been teaching her on her own, but she realized that the matter would have to be resolved before the next school year started. And summer was fast approaching, which meant that very soon the problem would become very acute. Yes, besides, you become the girl's legal guardian. That, of course, comes with certain benefits. Plus, as I understand it, you'll qualify for certain allowances and benefits as a mother of many children. It worked out exactly as he said. Of course, money was always in short supply, but now, at least, Kate could be sure that the children would be clothed, fed, and educated. Contrary to her fears, life without Alex hadn't collapsed, not only financially, but emotionally as well. No matter how hard she tried, she was still unable to experience any feelings about his departure. Something in her must have faded at the very moment when her husband rashly accused her of infidelity, which was not the case. Such a reaction was very surprising to Kate herself. But for all that, she couldn't help but be pleased. With 4 children in her arms, it would be a shame to suffer for a love that had collapsed. On the other hand, perhaps the children contributed to her peace of mind. With all her worries, she had no time for sadness and despair. So 2 more years passed. For the convenience of all members of the family, the flat was conditionally divided into 2 halves, male and female. Mia and the youngest Tracy moved into Kate's room, where the adults used to live. Sam stayed in his room with his brother Cole. It was cramped, of course, but so far it hadn't caused any particular problems. Mia and Sam's friendship was growing stronger every day. They went to the same school now. True, the girl was a grade below them. The boy treated her like another little sister and looked after her in every possible way. With the younger children, she also had a great relationship. In short, despite her unexpected appearance, she perfectly fit into the family. Kate herself fell in love with the girl as her own daughter, and sometimes even forgot that this is not true. Mia, in turn, quite quickly got used to calling the woman Mum, and her children brothers and sisters. The day on which the little girl was discovered, they had amicably decided to consider it her birthday. It seemed quite symbolic to Kate. After all, who knows what might have happened to Mia if she hadn't caught her eye in time. In a way, it could be said that Alex's horrible scene that night had saved her from a much sadder fate. And while Kate was glad that Mia was now her daughter, she couldn't figure out if anyone was looking for her. On the advice of a policeman, she repeatedly advertised for the child, but to no avail. The police also did not succeed in finding her parents. Adding to the worry was the fact that the girl had never regained her true memories. It seemed that until the moment she woke up in the park, she simply did not exist in this world, which of course there was no way that could be true. And Kate really wanted to know what it was really like. But the various doctors at the public health center had just thrown up their hands. They had never dealt with such complicated cases and had no idea what to do. The only thing that one of the doctors was able to do was to give the contacts of a good private clinic specializing in helping children with memory loss. But the family, of course, had no money for that. Mia herself did not seem in the least disturbed by the lack of memories of the past. She was childishly naive and lived today, and knew only that this day is good for her. And what had been there before was not so important. Kate couldn't understand that either, and even envied her adopted daughter in some white way. She herself at her age wanted to know who her parents were and why they were no longer with her. And as a result, she so annoyed the tutor with her questions that she answered her honestly and directly they were drunkards, unnecessary and useless, just like you yourself. Then they died. And you fell on our heads. Did you get what you wanted? Happy? Now go clean the toilets. It's your turn today. Thinking back on the episode, Kate sometimes thought that maybe it was a good thing that Mia had no interest in her past. On the other hand, when the woman had found her, she hadn't looked at all like a kid who'd had a lot of bad luck in this life. Quite the opposite, in fact. And the thought often crossed her mind that it might have been much more comfortable and pleasant for the girl to live with her own family than with them. However, one way or another, Kate could not change anything in this situation, although she made every effort to do so. In the end, she resigned herself to the idea that they would never know the whole truth. And perhaps it was at that moment that she finally decided that the girl was not just temporarily living with her, but was a full-fledged member of her family. And then there was a question of not just being her guardian, but to fully adopt the child. And here she encountered a funny, and at the same time sad legal subtlety. Still in an official marriage, she could not do it without her husband's consent. That meant only one thing: she had to get a divorce. With a heavy heart, Kate dialed Alex's number. She didn't want to talk to the man, and she would have been much more willing to do it through the courts. But such a process would take much longer, and the woman hoped that her husband, with whom she hadn't had any contact for 2 years, would agree to just peacefully file a petition and go their separate ways, not only in fact, but also officially. Katie, she heard Alex's affectionate voice in the phone. "I'm so glad you finally called me. You have no idea how much I've missed you." Kate was taken aback. On the one hand, something hurt and at the same time sweetly pricked her heart. It was the way he'd spoken to her before the horror of what had happened to them. And for a moment, it was as if she were back in those happy times. On the other hand, it sounded so inappropriate now. "I know you miss me too, and you'll make the right decision in the end," Alex continued inspiringly. "You can't just leave your husband because of some street girl. You're calling to tell me that this problem is solved and I can come back. All the happy memories are gone." With the last phrase, her husband vividly reminded Kate of the reason why, when he left, she wasn't even too upset. So she replied in the coldest possible tone, "Alex, I'm calling to ask you for a divorce." "So you found a new man?" His voice immediately lost all viscosity. "That was quick, I'll give you that." "I didn't find anyone. It's none of your business. Not since you left me alone with 4 kids. Like you said, we got along just fine without you. And now I'd like to settle this last formality." "I didn't leave you," my husband said indignantly. "I just couldn't stay in the same flat with that girl, and I wasn't in a position to carry another child, so I've withdrawn from your life until you solve this problem." "Believe me, I've solved all my problems except the one I'm calling you about. Let's end this pointless conversation, Alex. I don't need you or my kids anymore." "Well, he sounded really angry. In that case, sue me. I won't give you a divorce. But I suggest you think twice before you do it. And for example, remember that the flat you and I bought in marriage. It's a jointly acquired property. And now I have to live with my parents, who are not too keen on having me here. You see where I'm going with this?" With these words, he hung up the phone. Kate couldn't believe what she'd heard. Would he really not give her a divorce? Moreover, he threatened to deprive her and the children of their only home if she decided to do so. Was this really the romantic and loving young man she had once married? But she had nowhere to retreat. After a few more attempts to negotiate peacefully with her husband, she realized it was all useless. Either she gets rid of Mia and Alex returns home, or divorce through the court with the division of the flat. He wouldn't hear of any other options. "I realize you still need time to come to your senses," he said in one of those conversations. "And I'm in no hurry to make a decision. But since you've deigned to talk to me, I'm waiting for your decision. And even my patience isn't unlimited." Kate herself didn't want to drag this all out, maintaining a kind of status quo. It was clear that this issue could not be suspended indefinitely. It had to be dealt with right now. After all, Mia's formal adoption was also a kind of formality, just like this divorce. That's true. But what if, for example, she wanted to remarry? In the end, Kate made up her mind after all and applied to the court. Before doing so, she did one thing. She tried to explain to the children in terms they could understand that their living conditions could soon become even worse than they were before. And for a while at least, they would all have to live in a one-room flat. To her surprise and delight, everyone was sympathetic to such a decision. Alex kept his word and really tried to claim his share of the flat. However, unexpectedly, the court rejected his claim. The judge referred to the fact that all their children live in the flat with their mother. In addition, there is also the only place of residence of another child. Therefore, it is impossible to divide the flat in any way, except in the case if a part of children the former father will take to itself on permanent residence and education. There was an ominous silence in the hall. The children were too young for their opinion and desired to be taken into account by the court. Consequently, at this point, everything depended on Alex's answer. For a few minutes, he looked triumphantly at his former spouse. She understood that he didn't need children, but for the sake of torturing his nerves, he might agree to this proposal. And then they would face many months of new litigation, fighting for the children, which of course he would lose. But all of this will take time and money away from Kate, not to mention the stress. However, her husband apparently decided that he did not need these problems either, and agreed that the children let them stay with their mother, but in this case he is entitled to compensation in the amount of the market value of his share of the flat. The court agreed with this. However, given Kate's small income and the number of her dependents, she would have to pay this money in small sums over many years. Not that this decision satisfied any of the parties. Nevertheless, it was the only possible compromise. In Kate's family, this state of affairs was considered an absolute victory. The children, however she had prepared them, were terrified of the legal process, and especially of the prospect of being separated and forced to live with a father whom the younger ones did not even remember. And now that it was all behind them, the boys were jubilant. Besides, being a completely free woman and Mia's legal guardian, Kate, though not without difficulty, was able to get the girl officially adopted. This was the occasion for a big, by their standards, holiday. Inexpensive but tasty cake from the shop and a trip to the amusement park were to be its indispensable attributes. None of us have ever been to such a place in our lives, she told the children. But of course, each of you has dreamed of going there at least once. For 3 months, the woman saved up the little money she had. She spent all the money she could to save up for this trip and to give her children a real entertainment. And now the big day has come. The kids looked around with interest, trying to choose which of the various entertainments they would like to experience. Of course, trying everything at once was out of the question, and luckily even the little ones were well aware of these limitations. Only Mia, usually boisterous and cheerful, was unusually quiet. She was looking around with a strange expression on her face, as if she was wondering why she was in this place. But it was a very different kind of wonder from everyone else's. Mia paid little attention to the rides themselves. They seemed familiar to her. "Mia, are you all right?" Kate asked her, concerned about the girl's atypical behavior. "Yes, I'm fine," she replied in a quiet and colorless voice. This startled the woman even more. The tone of the child's voice was completely at odds with the meaning of her words, which was completely uncharacteristic of Mia. Open and trusting, she was not used to hiding her emotions. That's why her attempt to do so was a complete failure and alarmed her foster mother even more. Nevertheless, Kate did not continue the dialogue. She knew perfectly well that if Mia had any reason to try to hide her feelings, then no matter how much she questioned her, she would only succeed in making the girl even more withdrawn. Otherwise, there was a good chance that she would want to share her feelings. And that's what happened. Kate's own children, completely mesmerized by the surroundings, did not notice anything around them and argued passionately about which attraction should be tried first. Finally, they came to a common decision and went to the Ferris wheel. Mia suddenly refused to go with them, citing her fear of heights. No one tried to talk her out of it. She and Kate sat down on a bench, where they had a clear view of the cart the others had sat in, all the way round. An awkward silence reigned for some time. Then the girl interrupted it with a phrase which her foster parent least expected to hear. "Mum, don't be angry with me," she began, and then broke off half-heartedly, trying to see Kate's reaction in her eyes. "Was I ever angry with you?" she replied in surprise. "No," Mia said, embarrassed. "Well, you can now." "Why?" "Sunshine. What's wrong?" "You know, ever since we came to this park, I feel like I know it, like I've been here before. Maybe you have. It's not like I'm her again." Kate felt a sense of joyous anticipation. Could it be that memories are starting to come back for the girl? Could it be that her real parents really did take her to this particular park, or just a similar one, and now the surroundings are helping her recover her memory? "So why should I be angry about it?" Kate said. "What if something you all remember about your childhood and your other parents? So what's the harm in that? Because then we'll know exactly what happened to you. Maybe we can even find those people and let them know that you're okay. But then they'd probably want to take me away," Mia exclaimed, almost terrified. "It won't be that easy," Kate tried to reassure her. "You're 9 years old, maybe more. We don't even know that for sure. You've seen for yourself the other day that a trial isn't a quick process, and you can't do without it once you're 10. You can decide what kind of family you want to live with, and then maybe you'll like your birth parents better than me." "No," Mia pouted. "How can you know that?" "They abandoned me," she said with a childish firmness. "Maybe they didn't abandon you, but lost you and can't find you," Kate said. "I'm used to you anyway, you and your brothers and sister. I've been trying hard not to remember anything for a long time now, so that, Mia couldn't find the right words. Kate understood her perfectly well enough, so that she wouldn't have to make that impossible choice. I mean, she probably loved her real parents too, and if she remembered them, the feelings might return. But her new family was already practically her own. "Look," Kate said as gently as she could. "You may think there are only 2 options, but there are so many more. If we find your real parents, you don't have to say goodbye to us forever. You'll be able to visit us, play with your brothers and sister, and do it quite often, I assure you." Mia rounded her eyes. It seemed that such an option had never occurred to her at all, but now her thoughts were flowing in that direction. And the girl calmed down a little, realizing that things were not as hopeless as she had imagined. Unfortunately, Kate could not say the same about herself. She was not at all sure that her own soothing words were true. There was no telling how long the conversation would have gone on, or where it would have led, had it not been interrupted in a rather unceremonious manner. A man dressed in an amusement park employee's uniform approached them. He had a broom in his hands, and he didn't look the most welcoming. Nevertheless, when he spoke, his words sounded polite and without any aggression. "Hello. I apologize, but your daughter looked very familiar. Isn't that Emily by any chance?" When she heard that name, the girl perked up. From the outside, she was like a lost dog who, in the casual conversation of strangers, heard her name. She stared intently at the park worker, as if trying to remember if she had met him before. "You see, here's the thing," Kate said, choosing her words carefully. "We don't know for sure, and we can't rule out that it is her. The fact is that this girl was found about 3 years ago, quite far from this place. She was wandering the street at a very childlike time. Remembered absolutely nothing of her past and unfortunately still doesn't to this day. If you really know her," Kate continued, but the park worker interrupted her. "3 years ago," he exclaimed in a daze. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's when I or anyone else last saw the girl I'm talking about. Of course, she looked much younger then, but the resemblance is striking." "Tell me the story from the beginning," Kate suggested. At that time, the children who had been on the Ferris wheel returned. However, the eldest son Alex realized from the mere look of his mother that something serious was going on, and it was not worth interfering with the conversation. He diverted the attention of the younger children to some attraction, and then carefully led them away. They used to come here a lot, you see. The Petrov family, the park worker, finally began. But I learned later that they were called that: a father, a mother, and a little girl. They came here almost every week, and then they disappeared. But I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe they found another park they liked better, or something. That's when the entertainment stuff started sprouting up all over the city like mushrooms after a rainstorm." "And then what happened?" Mia asked, listening to him as if mesmerized. "And then I saw an advert in the paper that this girl was missing. The parents were offering a lot of money for any information about her whereabouts, but as I understand it, they never found her." "Do you have, I don't know, a copy of the paper?" Kate asked with a mixture of fear and hope. "There's no copy of the newspaper," the park employee replied. "But if you're interested in the contacts of these people, I've kept them just in case I see or hear something." Digging a little in his pocket, he pulled out an old mobile phone, found the number, and dictated it to Kate. "It would be nice if you turned out to be Emily," he said to Mia one last time. "Her parents, as far as I could see, adored her." Mia and Kate returned home in a strange, agitated state. Perhaps the solution to the mystery that had plagued both of them for 3 years was right in their hands. But neither of them knew where its unraveling would lead. Shrewd Sam, of course, noticed that something was wrong. But he didn't ask any questions. Instead, he diverted his attention away from the younger Jake and Kyle, so they wouldn't pester him. Kate spent several days in a row with the phone in her hands, dialing the number she wanted, then quickly dropping it before the call could go through. It wasn't even that she was afraid of what she might find out. It was just that she had no idea how to start this difficult conversation. But at some point, gathering her strength, she did take that decisive step into the unknown. "Hello, what can I do for you?" After a few beeps, a pleasant male voice answered her. "Hello," Kate said. Then she exhaled sharply and continued, "My name is Kate, and I'm calling about your daughter, who disappeared about 3 years ago." "What?" The polite, neutral, friendly tone of the interlocutor immediately changed. The man was obviously stunned by what he heard and had no idea how to react, whether to be happy, or indignant, or frightened. "You see, the thing is, there is some possibility that she has been in my care all this time. And just recently she was adopted by me," Kate continued. "I can't say for sure," Kate continued, "because for some reason she had lost her memory and had no idea of her relatives. I don't want to get your hopes up, but a few days ago she seemed to be recognized by an amusement park worker. I think you and I should meet and talk it over." The man replied gruffly, "You're right. But I'd prefer the first meeting to take place without the girl's participation. Why disturb her and you unnecessarily?" "I agree," Kate replied. Only a few hours had passed when Kate, terribly worried, entered one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. A man was already waiting for her at the indicated table. He was perhaps 10 years older than she was, which did not affect his attractiveness. Even in such an environment, Kate couldn't help noticing that he looked absolutely gorgeous. "Hello again," she said, taking a seat across from him. He nodded silently, either not wanting to say anything or unable to. Without saying a word, he took out a folder from his business briefcase and, placing it on the table, carefully moved it towards her. Kate, in turn, handed him some simple film photographs of Mia. Opening the folder, Kate found that the stranger had the same idea in his mind as she had. He had brought several pictures of his daughter, apparently taken shortly before her disappearance at the very same amusement park. In one of the pictures, she posed in the pink dress she had been wearing the night Kate had found her on the street. There was no doubt about it, it was Mia in the images. Kate had no pictures of the girl from the same period. Only the most recent pictures, taken with a recently acquired cheap camera bought offhand from one of the classified sites. Despite this, the man obviously recognized his daughter unmistakably. "It's Emily," he whispered. "My God, she's alive. And as far as I know, perfectly healthy. Except for the memory loss. I'm afraid it's true that I had no way of providing the standard of living to which she was accustomed. But the alternative was an orphanage, and I felt that even my modest two-room flat on the outskirts was better than that." The man fell into silence again. Kate did not hurry him. She roughly understood the storm going on in the man's soul. At last, Kate calmed down a little, and the man was able to state his thoughts more or less coherently. The first thing he said was quite unexpected. "I never introduced myself, did I? My name is Jack. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you," Kate replied in a casual tone. I'm sorry, I'm in a bit of a state of shock right now. But anyway, I must thank you for taking my little girl in. I've been trying to find her parents for quite a while, but I guess I missed you somehow," she began cautiously. "You, I understand, mostly placed adverts in newspapers, and I put them on the internet." "I didn't even think about the internet, and no one told me. Although I was always told I was too modern, especially for my age." "Did you report it to the police?" "I did, of course," he sighed, "but they couldn't find anything." "That's strange, because I went to the police first. But the officer told me at the time that it was unlikely they would be able to do anything. I didn't know her name, and it must be necessary for them to check through their channels." Kate darkened visibly. "Speaking of which, you said she's lost her memory?" "Unfortunately, yes," Jack replied. "I took her to the doctors, but there was nothing they could do. It's true that when we were in that very park, it was as if she began to vaguely recognize the place. Maybe if she sees me, it'll trigger the rest of her memories." "I'd like to believe that," Jack said with another heavy sigh. "But there's another problem, you see." "What do you mean?" "You see, the girl has lived in our family like a family member. She became very attached to me, and perhaps more importantly, to my children. And I'm going to insist that they keep in touch. Unless, of course, you intend to take her in." Suddenly, Jack was very specific. "You're not very well off, are you?" "I'm not ashamed of it," Kate said. "And I can assure you that Emily, gets everything she needs to live." "Yeah, that's what I'm getting at," Jack said. "I just think I have an offer for you that will suit all parties. Unless, of course, you're too attached to your job." "What exactly are you proposing?" "Well, you see, I'm a lonely, busy man, and I'm not sure I can devote the time I need to my child. You see, after everything that's happened, I've been so busy. I have a big mansion in the suburbs," Jack said. "You can move in with the kids and be my live-in nanny. Don't worry about school. You can send your kids there with your own driver. By the way, there's an upscale institution just down the road. I think we can get not only Emily there, but her new siblings as well." "You said you have several siblings, right?" 3, Kate confirmed. "And 2 of them are due to start school this year." "So you're in?" "It's a very tempting offer," Kate said thoughtfully. "There's just one thing I don't understand. That park worker said that you always came there in threes. Where's your wife?" Jack lowered his eyes to the table, but Kate could see tears glistening in his eyes. Only now did she realize how tactless her question had been. They'd lost the baby. Perhaps they thought the girl was dead. There was no telling what could happen to a mother under such circumstances. "You see," Jack said, getting over his emotions rather quickly, "Emily was a late child, very much wanted and loved. My wife and I wanted a big family, but it didn't work out for a long time. And then, finally, our daughter came along. The doctors said that the second birth Jessica's body simply could not withstand. And then our only daughter went missing. And now she's found. My poor wife was only a few months away from that moment. She got sick right after Emily went missing. and now she's gone. I'm sorry, Kate said quietly. I'm sorry for your loss. He nodded and took a sip of water from the glass. They sat in awkward silence for a few painful minutes, and then, wanting to change the subject to something less painful, they began discussing the details of the move and Mia's meeting with her birth father. As a result, Kate returned home with a clear plan of action. Her own children took the move to the huge Smith mansion as a magical adventure. Even Sam, always reserved and serious beyond his years, almost jumped for joy. Mia alone showed no signs of happiness. She still didn't remember her father and was afraid to meet him. She was also visibly upset by the news of her mother's death. I don't remember her now, she said to Kate. And I'm not even sad. But if I did, I'd probably be very sad, Mia said. That's why I chose to tell you now, so you'd be ready when you remember. Kate answered her. It took another 2 weeks before the family was completely ready to move. And now, finally, the day had come when Mia was to meet her birth daddy. Everyone involved in witnessing the event, except for the little twins Taylor and Ryan, were terribly excited. Even Sam was visibly worried about his sister. Jack had organized the transport of their belongings. He sent his personal driver to pick up the family. All the way the girl sat on pins and needles, twirling, bouncing, and unable to concentrate on anything. However, when they drove out of town, she suddenly froze, looking out the window as if she recognized the scenery outside. As soon as the car pulled up to the mansion, she shrieked loudly. Jack was just as worried as his daughter, waiting for them right on the doorstep. The girl got out of the car and froze, looking either at him or at the house. Her father stepped forward, but hesitated, and in the end he stayed where he was, shuffling nervously from foot to foot. She walked over to him and said in a questioning tone, "Daddy? Emily, my daughter, do you remember me?" He could see that he was restraining the urge to hug the child so as not to frighten her. After all, he was well aware that he was probably nothing more than a strange uncle to her now. Even though she had been informed that he was her father, she probably didn't remember or feel it. Vaguely said the girl, "It's like I'm remembering something, but no. Maybe I just made it up in the first place." And unable to withstand the heat of emotion, she cried. Kate and Sam came running over to her and wrapped her in a tight hug. "It's okay," her foster mother said. "It's all right, my daughter. Give yourself time. You'll remember everything. Let's not rush things." The last phrase was addressed to Jack. He, however, did not think to take action, realizing the complexity of the situation. Abruptly turning round, he went into the house, gesturing for the new residents to follow him. The family had already been living in the mansion for a month, and the girl's memory had not even begun to recover. From time to time she remembered fragments of the story, but she couldn't tell if they were true or figments of her imagination. Finally, Jack and Kate decided that it was time to seek professional help. By some miracle, the woman found a business card of a private clinic, which had once been left to her by one of the doctors of the city hospital. Jack could afford to pay for the services of its specialists, and Mia began to visit the facility on a regular basis. Don't expect immediate results, one of the doctors warned them. It can take many months or even years to regain memory, especially if it was lost as a result of a dramatic incident. "Do you think she suffered some kind of trauma?" Jack asked worriedly. "I mean psychological trauma," the doctor explained. "Our examination showed no physical injuries, but the very fact that she was lost could be what blocked her memory, especially if she had time to decide that she was never coming home again. A defense mechanism of sorts, if you like. And now we have to convince her brain that it doesn't need it anymore." That night, after putting the kids to bed, Kate knocked on Jack's room. He was sitting at his desk writing something in a thick notebook. "Do you need something?" he asked politely. "Jack, I've been meaning to ask you something, but I've been hesitating. Tell me how Emily disappeared." "Call her by her usual name if you like. She doesn't respond to Emily anyway. It's not certain she ever will. As for the circumstances of her disappearance, I don't really know much about it. My wife and I put her to bed that evening. In the morning, she was gone. We searched the house and the neighborhood, but we found nothing. There were no security cameras either at our place or on the road at that time, but we found no trace of strangers in the house. It's as if she left on her own of her own accord. But she had no reason, as far as I can see, to do so. Not as far as I know, Jack replied. It's been 6 months of treatment at the clinic, and it's finally yielded its first results, and most happily for the girl's father. She finally remembered him. It was early in the morning when a pleased Mia ran down the stairs to the living room where Jack was having breakfast and embraced him in her arms. This, of course, in no way canceled her love and affection for her new family. It was only now that she was really glad that they all lived in one spacious house. From then on, she began to answer to both her names. And when it was time for her to get a passport, she insisted that they both be registered there. From that day on, her memory gradually returned to her. The girl recalled some episodes from her childhood, her mother, neighborhood children with whom she liked to play. By the time she was 14, she remembered everything but one thing. What exactly happened the day she went missing, and how she managed to end up on the other side of town. It wasn't until another 2 years later that those memories began to come back to her as well. Not all at once, very gradually. At first in the form of some vague images that came mostly in dreams, but gradually they became clearer and clearer until they finally formed into one coherent picture. And it was then that Mia Emily finally managed to tell her parents everything. The solution was ridiculously simple and trivial. "I went to get the kitten," she said. "What kitten?" Kate wondered. "A white one, so beautiful. It was in our yard and I couldn't sleep, so I watched it from the window. And then he left the yard and I wondered where he was going, so I climbed out of the window. My room was on the ground floor, so I followed him. I thought it wouldn't be far, I'd just take one look. I came out of the courtyard and he was gone. I went one way, I went the other. I tried to find him, but he was nowhere to be found. He must have run off somewhere to do his cat thing. Or maybe he was just out for a walk and went home. I was about to too, when I realized I wasn't going to find the cat anyway." "So you just got lost?" John wondered. "Yeah, that's how it works. And apparently trying to get back, I started walking further and further away from home. By morning I reached the town. I was cold, of course, tired and hungry. I decided I could take a bus. I've seen them here, they run here. And I went the wrong way, of course. And to tell you the truth, it was probably the wrong bus. So I wandered around the city for days and got to the other end of it. That's where, as I understand it, nobody thought to look for me. I didn't sleep the whole time, I was afraid. But at some point my body couldn't take it, and I fell asleep right on a bench in the park. And when I woke up, I didn't remember anything. I went wherever I was going. And then my mom met me. That's the whole story." Around the same time that Mia Emily's memories came back, John and Kate decided to get married. Living in the same house, they became very close and found quite a few common interests. And Kate's own children have long perceived her new husband as their father. He answered them in the same way. Kate fulfilled her childhood dream again, entered the Institute at the Faculty of Economics and graduated with honors. After that, her husband gladly took her to work in his company. The woman sold her second flat, having fully paid off Alex for his share in this living space. So they lived as a big, friendly family in the huge mansion, which was now theirs. As a memento of their adventures, Mia Emily brought a huge white cat from somewhere. The street animal required a long course of treatment. Her parents grumbled about her daughter's reckless act, but they kept the cat. Very soon he became a favorite in the house.